Chapter 1599. Of course it's a storage ring. Now that you've mastered the art of mechanisms, we can take whatever we want from the immortal emperor's tomb. If that's the case, the few storage rings we have won't be enough. Bai Xiaoyan seemed to be deep in thought. The immortal kings of the immortal mountains overseas definitely have them. If you need them, you might as well ask them. Call the senior and junior brothers of the Divine Secrets Pavilion over. It'll be chaotic here. Jiang Chen quickly stopped Bai Xiaoyan's thoughts. With the senior and junior brothers and junior sisters in the pavilion, they were used to living a poor life. If they knew that the treasures in the immortal emperor's tomb could be sold for hundreds of millions of immortal jade, they would definitely do their best to rob this place. At that time, he would not only offend Tianling Mountain, the Myriad Beast sect, and the Green Shielan sect, but all the sects in the eastern region. No matter how strong the Divine Secrets Pavilion was, they would not be able to fight against the eastern region. That's true. The immortal kings overseas are still relatively rich. Bai Xiaoyan patted her head. Of course, compared to our Divine Secrets Pavilion, they're considered rich. Jiang Chen heaved a sigh of relief. There were still 3 to 4 hours before dawn. It was not convenient to search the tomb at night. Once the mechanism was triggered, there was no way to guard against it immediately. Therefore, other than a small number of people, most sects took advantage of the night to rest and search the tomb at dawn. Jiang Chen did not rest. Instead, he continued to read the art of mechanisms. Regardless of whether there were treasures in the tomb or not, at least it could save his life at a critical moment. Even an immortal king could be severely injured by a mechanism set up by an immortal emperor. Time passed quietly. When dawn broke, Jiang Chen yawned and closed the art of mechanisms. In 3 to 4 hours, he had read the entire book. It was impossible to learn the art of mechanisms in such a short time, but Jiang Chen had memorized all the content. Even if he had to sell it, he could rely on his memory to continue cultivating. Is little brother Jiang Chen here? Jiang Chen had just put away the book when there was a knock on the door. You are? When he walked to the door and saw a stranger standing outside, he asked in confusion. I'm a protector of the Thousand Harmonies sect. We should have met once at the auction. The man cupped his hands towards Jiang Chen and said, Last night, when the mechanism was activated, I saw you guys resting here. Yes. Is your Thousand Harmonies sect in trouble? Jiang Chen looked at him. Sure enough, he looked familiar. That's not true. Our sect is still one of the top sects in the eastern region. No sect would dare to make trouble for us. I'm here because the Great Elder asked me to tell you something. The protector shook his head. Please. Jiang Chen turned sideways and left the room. With Bai Xiaoyan here, Bai Fengyu shouldn't have any problems. Following behind the protector, Jiang Chen arrived at the leftmost part of the tomb. Just like him, the Thousand Harmonies sect found an empty room to rest. At this moment, the Great Elder was sitting cross-legged in the middle of everyone. When he saw Jiang Chen enter, he quickly stood up. All of you can leave. I have something to say to little friend Jiang Chen. The Great Elder waved his hand towards the protectors and disciples in the room. After they left, the Great Elder asked Jiang Chen to close the door. I wonder why the Great Elder called me here? Jiang Chen took a few steps forward and stood in front of the Great Elder. The Great Elder put his hands behind his back and slowly said to Jiang Chen, After yesterday's exploration and my understanding of the Immortal Emperor's tomb, I'm sure that this isn't a mausoleum, but the Immortal Emperor's sect. If it's a sect, then the treasure left behind by the Immortal Emperor should be in the treasure pavilion or his residence. He had thought about this for an entire night before he was prepared to tell Jiang Chen. The Great Elder understood that if he told Jiang Chen this news, then their Thousand Harmonies sect wouldn't have the qualifications to obtain the Immortal Emperor's treasure and would suffer a great loss. But if he didn't say it, then Jiang Chen would owe him one less favor. Previously, he thought that Jiang Chen was a talented young man. Although he was the Pavilion Lord of the Heaven Secrets Pavilion and the Alliance Lord of the Overseas Immortal Mountain Alliance, these two identities weren't confirmed, so the Great Elder only believed half of it. However, when Jiang Chen had confronted Xianjun, he had clearly sensed how strong this young man's support was. The Kunlun Celestial Mountain, the Overseas Celestial Mountain, the Intelligence Pavilion, All of these famous forces in the immortal realm were now standing behind Jiang Chun. To tell you the truth, Great Elder, I feel the same way. Otherwise, the immortal emperor wouldn't have placed those things in different parts of the mausoleum, and he wouldn't have built so many secret passages and chambers. Jiang Chun didn't hide this point. So, our goal shouldn't be on the periphery. We should look for the treasure pavilion and the place where the immortal emperor usually lives. The real treasures should be hidden in these places. The Great Elder nodded and continued. Then what's your plan, Great Elder? Jiang Chun asked. Yesterday, there was news that not only the sects of the eastern region, but even the forces of the northern region have come here. I expected this to happen, but I didn't expect them to sneak in. After dawn, I'll bring the people of the sect directly to the deepest part of the mausoleum. If you don't want to move with our Thousand Harmonies sect, it's not a problem. However, facing those experts of the northern region, I'm afraid it'll be a little dangerous. The Great Elder looked at Jiang Chun and said his thoughts. There's no problem. With the Heavenly Mystery Pavilion and Kunlun Immortal Mountain here, if they want to touch me, they'll have to think twice. Jiang Chun waved his hand and said, That's right. Go back and prepare. I'll call on the protectors and disciples of the sect and instruct them before we move. Seeing that Jiang Chun was so confident, the Great Elder didn't say anything else. Okay, Jiang Chun replied. After returning to the resting room, Jiang Chun immediately told the news to Bai Xiaoyun and Bai Fengyu. Compared to Bai Fengyu, who was worried about his safety, Bai Xiaoyun was more concerned about what kind of treasures were in the treasure pavilion and the resting place of the immortal emperor, and whether there would be any traps there. After briefly explaining the situation, Jiang Chun brought them to the back of the mausoleum. A few sects also approached the back, but their strength was still lacking compared to the large sects like Heavenly Gem Mountain and Wanshou sect. Sensing the strength of this group of people, Bai Xiaoyun was even more confident. Great senior brother, you have to control yourself. The immortal emperor's tomb isn't as simple as we think. I'm afraid that the eastern region isn't just these sects on the surface. Moreover, the forces of the northern region have already been involved. Let's see the situation first. Seeing Bai Xiaoyun's excited look, Jiang Chun quickly reminded her. Chapter 1600. Sure enough, after bypassing the central area, they found a treasure pavilion with 6 or 7 floors in a place that looked like a backyard. Many people had already gathered here. In addition to some familiar faces in the eastern region, there were also some unfamiliar faces. Sure enough, the sects of the northern region have also arrived. Bai Xiaoyun glanced at them and whispered to Jiang Chun, I wonder if there are any from Kunlun Immortal Mountain. With them here, they can help us a lot. The master of the first mountain is waiting outside. Do you think the people from Kunlun Immortal Mountain will come? Jiang Chun rolled his eyes and asked. You don't seem to be from the eastern region, right? Just as Jiang Chun and Bai Xiaoyun were talking, the Grand Elder of the Qinna sect walked to the front of the crowd and looked at the people standing around the treasure pavilion with a faint smile. You're Su Qian? These people turned around and asked. Su Qian. This was the first time Jiang Chun heard the Grand Elder's name. Yes, I'm the Grand Elder of the Qinna sect. However, this immortal emperor's tomb was found in the eastern region. Logically speaking, only the sects of the eastern region are qualified to enter. You didn't inform us in advance and didn't get permission from the eastern region. It seems a little inappropriate to enter here, right? The Grand Elder stepped forward with a smile. The immortal emperor's tomb doesn't belong to your Qinna sect. Why should we follow the rules set by you? A burly man standing at the front stood directly opposite the Grand Elder. Not only did he not give any face to the Grand Elder, but he was also a little aggressive. Your Xian sect is somewhat famous in the northern region, but the eastern region is not a place for you to behave atrociously. The smile on the Grand Elder's face slowly disappeared. He looked at him and whispered, Leave here, or don't blame me for being impolite. Looking at the confrontation between the two sides, Jiang Chun asked in a low voice, Senior brother, what sect is this Xian sect? Is it from the northern region? Kid, are you a disciple of Kunlun Immortal Mountain? Bai Xiaoyun was stunned for a moment before she explained. Although the profound sect isn't strong in the northern region, the weapons they forge are the best in the entire northern region. Therefore, there are basically no sects that dare to offend them. Moreover, there are many sects that need their weapons, so they have a good relationship with them. I see. Jiangchen nodded. He didn't know much about the sects in the northern region, and he wasn't interested in learning about them before. But now that he had come into contact with the other party, he had to know how strong the other party was. This way, he would be able to act appropriately when competing for the supreme treasure left behind by the immortal emperor. Hearing the other party's words, the first elder took a deep breath. With the foundation of the Thousand Harmonies sect, not to mention the eastern region, even the sects of the northern region and southern region had to give them some face. But now, this person actually spoke in front of so many sects without any respect or fear in his words. This made the great elder feel very uncomfortable. Su Qian, this immortal emperor's tomb, is shared by the entire immortal world. Don't look down on your eastern domain. The treasures inside can only be obtained by those with the ability. Now, your eastern domain wants to monopolize it. If we hadn't received the news, I'm afraid you guys would have taken all the benefits. That's right. Why don't we draw a clear line? This treasure pavilion belongs to us. Other than that, we won't go anywhere else in the tomb. Your eastern region sects can search as much as they want. How about it? Not only the people of the mysterious sect, but also the people of the other sects kept talking. They only had one purpose, and that was to get a share of the immortal emperor's tomb. And they wanted to get the best share. Very good, very good. The first elder laughed angrily and pointed at them. First elder, do you want to compete with us? The burly man from before took a step forward. If the three of you can hurt me together, our eastern region can give up this place. But if you're not my match, go back to where you came from. You're not allowed to touch the immortal emperor's tomb again. The first elder was not afraid at all. With his strength, it was not a problem to deal with these people in front of him. Okay, since first elder Su Qian is interested, then we juniors will accompany you to practice. But fists and feet have no eyes. If you get hurt, don't trouble us. First elder Su Qian, please. Three people from different sects in the northern region strode forward and stood in front of him. Without my order, no one is allowed to make a move. Su Qian waved his sleeve, and a vigorous, immortal power spread out from his body, enveloping all three of them within it. After that, he spoke indifferently to the protector beside him. Then he put his hands behind his back and slowly walked into the barrier. As one of the oldest sects in the eastern region, the China sect naturally would not allow these sects in the northern and southern region to challenge the authority of the eastern region. This was not to stand up for the other sects in the eastern region, but to protect the China sect's position in the eastern region. If he did not make a move now, wouldn't he be ridiculed by others? The moment the barrier appeared, everyone's eyes were focused on it. The cultivation of those three people was around the second layer of the Immortal King realm. Although everyone knew that the strength of the China sect's first elder was unfathomable, Su Qian had never revealed his true strength in front of everyone, so no one knew exactly how many layers of the Immortal King realm they were in. But they knew that three people in the second layer of the Immortal King realm were not weak. In the eastern region, except for a few powerful top sects, they could almost destroy any force. Get ready to attack at any time. Several protectors of the China sect secretly condensed their immortal power, ready to attack at any time. On the other side, Jiang Chun was also watching the situation inside the barrier. As early as when the first elder confronted Xian Jun because of him, he could already feel that this person's strength should be around the fifth layer of the Immortal King realm. It was a little tricky to deal with three people in the second layer of the Immortal King realm, but it was not impossible. It's really strange. According to the news, these sects from the northern region or southern region should have arrived here yesterday. Why are these people still waiting outside the treasure pavilion? Could it be that they are abiding by the rules and want to enter after the battle with the eastern region? Bai Xiaoyan rubbed her forehead and whispered in puzzlement. There are mechanisms in this treasure pavilion. They must have suffered a lot and are carefully thinking of a way to crack it. They are afraid that the sects in the eastern region will ruin their plans. Thinking of the content he saw in the Art of Mechanisms last night, Jiang Chun explained lightly. Oh, what mechanism? Can you trigger it? If I can trigger it, then I will kill all these people directly. The treasures in this treasure pavilion will belong to our Tianji pavilion. Bai Xiaoyan moved closer to Jiang Chun and murmured in an even lower voice. Let's see if the first elder can kill them first. Jiang Chun did not listen to Bai Xiaoyan's words. Chapter 1601. I'm Sun Sheng from the Yin Yang sect. Sorry to offend you. After saying this, the burly man rushed directly toward the great elder. Although he was in such a reckless way, all the immortal power in his body was attached to his body. At this time, it seemed like a body technique, but in fact his whole body had turned into the support of an immortal technique. The second elder of the Yin Yang sect? The great elder's eyes were gloomy. He had heard of this person and originally thought that it would be an old man who would make do with it. He did not expect that it was actually a burly man in his prime. However, after being surprised, the great elder also reacted. In the immortal world, which cultivator had not existed for hundreds or even thousands of years, as long as he wanted to, he could also disguise himself as a young man. The moment Sun Sheng rushed over, a very sharp wave of immortal power appeared in the barrier. Sun Sheng's fist condensed two different rays of light, one white and one black. When he rushed in front of the great elder, he raised his fist high and smashed it toward the great elder's head. Mountain-breaking fist, Sun Sheng shouted. This punch seemed ordinary, but it was the top immortal technique of the Yin Yang sect. When cultivated to the great success stage, only one punch was enough to split mountains and shatter mountains and rivers. This killing move was to let the eastern region see clearly that the immortal emperor's tomb was shared by all in the immortal world, and anyone was qualified to be here. Moreover, he also understood that as long as Su Qian was seriously injured, no one in the eastern region would dare to stop them. The punch was mixed with strong wind and majestic immortal power, and it hit the great elder's face hard. Great elder! After seeing this scene, the protectors of the Qinna sect could not help but shout loudly. The spectators were also very surprised. Even Jiang Chun frowned. According to Su Qian's strength, he should be able to dodge Sun Sheng's attack. Why was he standing there motionless, like a wooden stake? Faced with the doubts of the outside world, Sun Sheng's face did not show any joy. Instead, he gradually became uneasy. He was already prepared to miss that punch just now. Moreover, he was also preparing an even more powerful attack. He was waiting for Su Qian to counterattack so that he could catch him off guard. Whoosh! Just when he was feeling uneasy, an even stronger wind suddenly attacked. Slap! The crisp sound of a slap rang out and spread outside the barrier. The great elder's figure appeared behind Sun Sheng out of nowhere and slapped him viciously. This palm directly hit Sun Sheng until he spun 2 rounds on the spot and fell to the ground with a loud bang. It's just a clone, yet it's fighting so hard. The first elder clasped his hands behind his back, a cold smile on his withered face. His originally gentle eyes were now filled with ferocity. Originally, he didn't want to go against these people. He was prepared to stay his hand and expel them. However, Sun Sheng's punch made it clear to him that although he wanted to hold back, this group of people really wanted to kill him. Therefore, just as the fist was about to land on him, the great elder's mind moved. He left behind a clone and disappeared into the barrier, waiting for an opportunity to make a move. Insidious old thing. Sun Sheng was hit so hard that it was difficult for him to stand up from the ground. He covered the side of his face that was already swollen and looked like he was struggling. Being slapped in the face by Su Qian in front of so many sects in the East region, North region, and South region was no longer a matter of injury. It was a hard rubbing of his face on the ground. After this slap, he would become the laughingstock of the entire North region and East region. Old thing? The great elder sneered. Seeing the 2 people behind him standing still, Sun Sheng shouted at the top of his voice, "What are you waiting for? Are we the only ones who want to enter the treasure house?" Su Qian. The 2 of them looked at each other and immediately rushed forward. One on the left and one on the right, they directly locked onto the great elder's position. From this angle, even if he could still use his clone to escape, he would still be caught and heavily hit by them. Just now, when the great elder fought with Sun Sheng, They roughly understood that the former strength should be about the fourth tier of the Immortal King realm. Although he was 2 tiers higher than them, it was really hard to say who would win if they joined forces. Facing the attacks of the two people, the Great Elder did not dare to let his guard down. His gray robe instantly fluttered, and then a red light slowly appeared above his head. The light was very strong, and almost in an instant, it had turned into a real flame. The appearance of this flame, even the temperature outside the bounded domain, rose rapidly in a short period of time. It's not too late to leave now. With the cultivation of the second tier of the Immortal King realm, you are no match for me. As he spoke, the flame gradually expanded and then enveloped the entire body of the Great Elder. He stretched out his hands, and 2 vigorous flames swept out. If one sensed it carefully, one would find that it was not a real flame at all, but a natural force of heaven and earth that had been transformed by immortal chi to a certain extent. Arm shield, bone spirit shield. Feeling the vigorous fluctuation of immortal power, the two of them immediately canceled their attacks and respectively used their special defensive skills. However, their strength was still somewhat inferior to the Great Elders. Even though they tried their best to block, they still suffered quite a bit of impact. TSK, this old man's strength is probably at the 6th tier of the Immortal King realm. I didn't expect there to be such an expert in the small northern region. It's really shocking. Seeing the situation inside the bounded domain, Bai Xiaoyan couldn't help but shake her head and say, just based on this immortal chi attack just now, Bai Xiaoyan was sure that she was no match for it. It seems that these people are in trouble today. Jiang Chun didn't continue to worry. With the strength that the Great Elder had displayed, it wouldn't be a problem for him to deal with these people. Swish! In a corner where no one could notice, a pitch-black needle flew out at a speed that couldn't be seen with the naked eye. It penetrated the bounded domain. It penetrated the Great Elder's flame defense. It directly pierced through his back and out of his chest. A sneak attack. Feeling the piercing pain, the Great Elder's expression turned cold. He immediately prepared to mobilize the remaining immortal chi in his body and kill the 3 of them here. However, not only did this black needle stab him, but it also disrupted the meridians in his body. When he wanted to mobilize immortal chi, he felt a sense of emptiness. Do it kill him? Sun Sheng didn't know why the Great Elder suddenly became weak, but he was very sharp and seized the opportunity. Enduring the pain on his face, the black and white light appeared on his fist again, and he smashed it fiercely towards the Great Elder's back. Bastard! Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, the Great Elder immediately turned around and stretched out his palm. A fireball the size of a stone, containing powerful immortal chi, bombarded Sun Sheng's body. Chapter 1602. Sun Sheng obviously did not expect the Great Elder to be able to use such a powerful immortal technique after being injured. He was not prepared at all. When the fireball hit his body, he immediately shouted. This condensed pure immortal power directly entered his chest and came out of his back, dissipating on the barrier. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Sun Sheng could no longer hold on and fell to the ground. Something's wrong. After knocking down Sun Sheng, the Great Elder turned around and looked at the 2 people in front of him who were raising their shields to defend against him. The dense flames that were originally condensed from immortal power on his body had become somewhat illusory at this moment, and his entire aura was rapidly weakening. The Great Elder clearly felt that it was impossible for Sun Sheng to cause any damage to him just now. In that case, the attack should have penetrated through the barrier. Looking around, the Great Elder did not find anyone present who had the strength to penetrate the flame barrier he had created. However, it was useless to think about this now. Dealing with Sun Sheng was the last immortal power he could muster. At this moment, he no longer had the strength to face the 2 second-layer immortal kings in front of him. The barrier slowly dissipated. Glancing at Sun Sheng, who was lying on the ground, a few people from the Yin-Yang sect immediately rushed up, ready to cause trouble for the Great Elder. Whoever dares to take a step forward will be killed on the spot. The protectors of the Chinna sect were not jealous. They quickly stepped forward to protect the great elder behind them. At the same time, they pointed at the people from the Yin-Yang sect and shouted in a low voice. According to the rules, your great elder Su Qian is no match for us, so you can't touch the treasure pavilion. The sects of the eastern region can search the other areas of the immortal emperor's tomb. If you dare to have any ideas about the treasure pavilion, don't blame us for being impolite. Sun Sheng was seriously injured, and these people from the Yin-Yang sect did not dare to be too rampant. Let's leave here first. This place is not as simple as it seems. Just as the protector of the Qinna sect was about to continue speaking, the great elder grabbed his arm and whispered, "Then wouldn't the things in the treasure pavilion be taken away by them?" The protector was somewhat unwilling to give up. "Listen to me. Even if they can take it out now, they won't immediately leave the immortal emperor's tomb. As long as they are still in the eastern region, we won't let them take it away so easily." The great elder said weakly, "Now that I'm seriously injured, it's not good for us to continue to stay here. Retreat." Hearing the first elder's words, the protector did not insist any further. Instead, he supported the first elder and quickly left. After the Thousand Harmonies sect left, the clans of the eastern region all shook their heads and left. Even an immortal king like the Thousand Harmonies sect's great elder was injured, so they naturally didn't dare to do anything. Haha, so the rumored Thousand Harmonies sect is actually so weak. I think the eastern region has really run out of ideas. Seeing the Qian sect leave, several people from the northern region sects laughed loudly. To them, Su Qian leaving this place was the best thing that could happen. In the eastern region, other than the Qinna sect, everyone else was a weakling. This was something that was publicly acknowledged in the immortal world. Sects like Tianling Mountain and Wanshou sect were not taken seriously by other sects at all. Isn't Su Qian a fifth-tier immortal king? How could he be so severely injured by 3 second-tier immortal kings? Bai Xiaoyan asked curiously. She was clear about the first elder's cultivation. When he was confronting Xian Jun, he had erupted with strength that was not much different from her master's. Facing 3 people at the 3rd layer of the immortal king realm, even if he couldn't kill them, he should have won without any suspense. But now, the great elder was injured in an instant. Even Bai Xiaoyan didn't see what kind of move he was injured with. "First, senior brother, I'll go and take a look at the situation of the Thousand Harmonies sect." Jiang Chun frowned slightly. He had the same idea as Bai Xiaoyan. "Hey, if you go, what will happen if these people enter the treasure pavilion?" Bai Xiaoyan grabbed Jiang Chen's arm and said in a low voice, "There are mechanisms in the treasure pavilion. They don't dare to go in, otherwise they wouldn't be waiting here." Jiang Chen said with a smile, "When the first elder was injured just now, I activated all the mechanisms and traps. As long as they dare to approach, they will definitely die." "TSK, it seems that it was necessary for me to touch your leg." Bai Xiaoyan suddenly laughed. Jiang Chen didn't say anything and quickly followed the people of the Thousand Harmonies sect. "First elder, why don't we go back? Now that you are seriously injured, you must return to the sect to recuperate. If there are any more problems, it will be difficult for us to explain to the patriarch when he comes out of seclusion." A few protectors persuaded as they supported Su Qian and walked outside. "No, I can't go back." The first elder shook his head firmly. It had only been about 10 minutes since he was injured, but his face had already become a little pale. Even his words were very weak. But, seeing the first elder like this, the protectors hesitated. "Find a room with no problems and send me to rest. You guys go back and keep an eye on which sects have taken things out of the treasure pavilion. They must not be allowed to take things out of the eastern region." The first elder broke free from their support and said in a deep voice. After his voice fell, he coughed heavily twice. "First elder, are you okay?" Jiang Chen quickly ran over and reached out to put his hand on the first elder's arm and asked, "Little brother Jiang Chen, I'm fine. I just need to rest." The first elder shook his head and revealed a helpless smile. "This matter is all because I was too careless. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been plotted against." "Plotted against?" Jiang Chen frowned. "Yes, I don't know if there is an expert who hasn't shown up yet, or if the mechanism in the immortal emperor's tomb has been triggered. Forget it, forget it. You and I go to rest. This is not the place to talk. Seeing that there were many people around, the first elder waved his hand and didn't continue. Even he didn't understand what had happened when he was injured. Okay, I'll support you. Jiang Chen nodded in agreement. However, he kept thinking about what the great elder had said. If he had really triggered the mechanism in the tomb, he should have known about it. After all, the art of mechanisms had introduced all the mechanisms in the immortal emperor's tomb. If there was an expert present, Jiang Chen had a candidate in mind. It was the Black Sect Master who had secretly moved Ku Wanjun and the other two out of the bounded domain of light. In the tomb, it seemed that only he had the ability to do so. They found a relatively remote room. Jiang Chen helped her into the room. A few law protectors were guarding the door. After being scolded by the Grand Elder, they went back the way they had come to keep an eye on those from other sects and schools. Chapter 1603. Phew. Sitting on the ground, the first elder exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. Only now did he relax. Jiang Chen, the tomb of the immortal emperor is not as simple as it seems. I told you before that there are sects other than our eastern region here, but now it seems that there are still some hidden dangers. Taking off the clothes on his upper body, the first elder clearly saw his injury. In the center of his chest, there was a very small needle hole. The needle hole penetrated through his body. Although the blood had already scabbed, the area around the wound had gradually turned black. It's poisonous. Jiang Chen glanced at it and said in a low voice, "Well, I've already suppressed it with my immortal power. With my cultivation of the 6th level of the Immortal King realm, this poison won't take my life, but it will greatly reduce my strength. I'm afraid it won't be able to recover in a day or two." The first elder nodded and stretched out his hand to press on the wound. Soon after, a ray of green light appeared and slowly healed his injuries. "First elder, you just said that there was a trap in the tomb and an expert. What happened?" Thinking of what the first elder said, Jiang Chen pretended to be confused and asked, "When I was fighting with them in the barrier, a black needle suddenly pierced through my barrier and my immortal power defense. It directly pierced through my body. This disrupted the balance of the immortal power in my body, making me unable to face the 3 immortal kings. This may have triggered a trap left by the immortal emperor, but if it was a trap, how could it accurately hit my chest and make me lose my ability to fight immediately?" The first elder shook his head and said helplessly, "What do you mean, first elder?" Jiang Chen continued to ask, "In this tomb of the immortal emperor, it's very likely that there's an expert that we haven't noticed. Whether he's from the northern region or the southern region, I don't know. After this person attacked, his aura instantly concealed itself. I couldn't sense him at all. If that's the case, then even if his strength isn't above mine, at least he's not much weaker than me. However, this expert could have entered the tomb openly. Why did he hide in the dark and attack me?" The first elder took a deep breath. The recovery of the injury on his chest made him feel a little more relaxed. However, his brows were still tightly furrowed as he pondered over the entire matter. Could it be an enemy of your Thousand Harmonies sect? Jiang Chen did not mention the sect master of the Black Sect. Instead, he wanted to see what the Great Elder thought. "Impossible. Our Thousand Harmonies sect has always been in the eastern region and has never had any conflicts with any other sect. Moreover, ever since the sect master went into seclusion, the Thousand Harmonies sect has never had any contact with any other sect except for the auction." However, the Great Elder seemed to be very certain, but halfway through his words, he suddenly stopped and his expression froze. Jiang Chen didn't say anything and waited quietly. The sect master of the Black Gate, Xian Jun, the Great Elder spoke slowly. He suddenly realized that these two people had the ability to seriously injure him. Perhaps one of them was hiding here and attacking him was their revenge. Xian Jun probably wouldn't do such a thing behind his back. Seeing that the first elder had already guessed the truth, Jiang Chen didn't try to hide it anymore. As one of the 3 great immortal kings, if news of him slandering others behind their backs spread out, wouldn't his reputation be ruined? Then there's only one left. The Great Elder's eyes changed from confusion to shrewdness. Great Elder, do you have a way to find him? Jiangchen walked in front of the Great Elder and sat beside him. It was possible before. As long as he appeared within the range of my immortal power, I would know his exact location. At this point, the Great Elder smiled bitterly. But now you know that I'm injured and can't completely control the immortal power in my body. If he deliberately hides, I have no way of knowing. I have an idea. Jiangchen thought for a while. The strength of the immortal kings in the overseas immortal mountains is a little weak. I'm afraid they won't be a match for him, and they won't be able to stop him. The Great Elder shook his head. That's true. Jiangchen was about to tell them about the giant ape, but after hearing the Great Elder's words, he climbed down the pole. But with the giant ape's cultivation at the 7th level of the Immortal King realm, it shouldn't be a problem to deal with the sect master of the Black Sect. Now that I'm injured, you have to be careful in the Immortal Emperor's tomb. If that person is really here, he will definitely find an opportunity to attack you. The Great Elder looked at Jiangchen worriedly. But then again, is that Eternal Riverbank's VIP really worth offending such a strong opponent? It's useless to say this now. I've already offended him. Jiangchen shrugged. In a corner of the Immortal Emperor's tomb, Chou Wanli and Zhou Yuanxing were resting. The two of them had already made up their minds to attack Jiangchen. But with their strength, they were no match for Jiangchen. But now there was good news. The Great Elder of the Thousand Harmonies sect was seriously injured. Jiangchen's greatest reliance here was gone. Sect leader Chou, what do you think we should do now? All the disciples I brought in are dead. In our current state, I'm afraid we can't pose any threat to Jiangchen. Zhou Yuanxing's face was gloomy. You want to give up? Chou Wanli's hatred for Jiangchen had reached its peak. No. Zhou Yuanxing shook his head. Old Zhou, think about what Jiangchen has done to us. All the benefits our two sects obtained in the tomb were all taken by this kid. If this matter spreads, our two sects won't be able to survive in the eastern region anymore. A dignified Immortal King sect was played by a kid who is only at the level 3 true Immortal realm. Can you afford to lose this face? Chou Wanli snorted coldly. When he thought of what Jiangchen had done before, he couldn't wait to rush out and tear Jiangchen into pieces. But he couldn't do it himself. Of course I won't forget. I'm just saying that we should think about it now. Although Su Qian is injured, he still has Bai Xiaoyan by his side. The two of us together are no match for him. Zhou Yuanxing hadn't completely lost his mind because of hatred. Ha! That's right. If I could give you a chance, would you cherish it? Suddenly, a strange voice sounded. Zhou Yuanxing and Chou Wanli instantly became alert. They stood up, activated the immortal qi in their bodies, and carefully looked around. This was a secret passage that Zhou Yuanxing had been to before. Logically speaking, no one should have appeared. Who is it? Sneaking around. If you have the ability, show yourself, and let me see. Chou Wanli stared at the dark end of the passage and vaguely felt that the voice was coming from there. Chapter 1604. Just as Chou Wanli finished his words, a figure shrouded in a black robe slowly walked out of the shadows. The moment the sect master of the Black Sect appeared, the temperature in the secret passage suddenly dropped and the atmosphere became gloomy. Who are you? Chou Wanli subconsciously took a few steps back and leaned against the damp and cold wall. Don't be so afraid. I'm here to help you. The sect master of the Black Sect smiled and stepped forward, but no one could see his expression under the black mask. He had been hiding in the Immortal Emperor's tomb for most of the day, following Jiangchen. He had originally planned to do it himself, but now it seemed like Jiangchen was a troublemaker through and through. In less than a day's time, he had provoked 2 more sections. With Ku Wanjun, he didn't even need to do it himself. Just these people alone could get rid of Jiangchen. Oh, you're not from the eastern region, are you? Zhou Yuanxing looked at the sect master of the Black Sect vigilantly. This was the first time he had encountered such a strange person. It was so strange that his hair stood on end and his heart was in his throat. Of course not. You just need to tell me if you want to kill Jiangchen. If you want, I can help you to make this person disappear completely in the eastern region. If you don't, I'll leave now. The The sect master of the Black Sect said gloomily. I don't need your help, Zhou Yuanqing said firmly. He was also an immortal king. Although he was seriously injured and his strength was limited, he could still feel how strange this person was. If he agreed, something more serious would happen. Wait! Qiu Wanli hurriedly shouted as soon as Zhou Yuanqing finished speaking. Sect Master Qiu, are you crazy? Zhou Yuanqing hurriedly pulled him aside and whispered, this person obviously feels that something is wrong. If we really agree to his proposal, I'm afraid it won't be as simple as helping us kill Jiang Chun. This is the best chance for us to kill Jiang Chun. If we miss it, I'm afraid we won't have another chance to kill him in our current state. Besides, since he's here, it means there's a conflict between him and Jiang Chun. Qiu Wanli simply did not listen to Zhou Yuanqing's words. Right now, all he could think about was how Jiang Chun had schemed against him and robbed him of everything. Even when he was injured, Jiang Chun had revealed his true intentions. Sect Master Qiu? Zhou Yuanqing frowned. Brother, I agree to join hands with you. As long as you can help us kill Jiang Chun, I will agree to one of your requests. We can also divide the treasures in Jiang Chun's hands equally. What do you think? Qiu Wanli did not continue to pay attention to Zhou Yuanqing. Instead, he ran directly to the sect master of the Black Sect and said in a deep voice, I don't want anything. I just need you and me to agree. The Black Sect master laughed hoarsely. Sect Master Qiu, this person is too strange. You can't cooperate with him. The more Zhou Yuanqing thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. He directly rushed over, grabbed Qiu Wanli's arm, and retreated. If you want to kill Jiang Chun, we can think about it at length. We can't have anything to do with this person. Zhou Yuanqing's action made the Black Sect master's face hidden under the mask instantly turn cold. He stretched out his hand, and an invisible suction broke out. He directly made Zhou Yuanqing lose his balance and rushed over. Pa! Zhou Yuanqing's neck was tightly grasped by the Black Sect master's hand. What do you want to do? Zhou Yuanqing grabbed his arm and twisted it hard, but found that he could not break free. The hand was getting closer and closer, making his breathing a little difficult. If you don't want to die, listen to my orders honestly. Otherwise, I can take your life at any time. The Black Sect master stared at him. After saying this, he waved his hand forcefully and threw him out. Puff! Zhou Yuanqing spat out a mouthful of blood. Do you still want to kill Jiang Chun? The Black Sect master looked at Qiu Wanli, who was standing in front of him. Of course, as long as I can kill Jiang Chun, I am willing to pay any price. Qiu Wanli nodded very firmly. His hatred for Jiang Chun made him almost completely lose the ability to think. Very good. Since you want to kill Jiang Chun so much, I will give you a hand. Of course, I will also have a little condition. But compared to your hatred, it is not worth mentioning. The Black Sect master put his hand on Qiu Wanli's body. As his words fell, a surge of immortal power flowed through his palm and into Qiu Wanli's body. What did you do to me? Qiu Wanli was not a fool. After seeing this situation, he was naturally a little scared. He could clearly feel that his body was not well. I help you recover your strength, so that when you face Jiang Chun, you will have confidence. The Black Sect master smiled faintly and did not stop. About 10 minutes later, he put his hand down. At this time, Qiu Wanli was standing in front of him like a wooden man. His eyes were dull and his muscles were stiff. After a while, black chi appeared in his eyes. Test your current strength, the Black Sect master said with satisfaction. Previously, when he attacked the three of them, it did not have much effect. That was because the three of them were only quasi-immortal kings. But now, the two people in front of him, regardless of their levels, were real immortal kings. Kaka, Wanli Cho gradually regained a trace of consciousness. He clenched his fist, and his bones crackled. An even more vigorous aura than before filled his body. Go, find the right opportunity to attack Jiang Chun. The Black Sect master nodded with satisfaction. A puppet with immortal king cultivation was strong enough. Qiu Wanli did not speak. He was still himself, but now he was under the control of the Black Sect master. The Green Qilin Sect master, right? After Qiu Wanli left the secret passage, The Black Sect Master slowly walked in front of Zhou Yuansheng, squatted down, and laughed in a hoarse voice. "Who the hell are you?" Zhou Yuansheng noticed the change in Xiao Wanli's expression, which confirmed his suspicions. Moreover, he understood that this person seemed to be more dangerous than he thought. He had never seen such a person in the Eastern Territory. Outer region, Black Sect. The Black Sect Master did not hide it at all. "Let me out of here, and I won't tell anyone about your situation." Zhou Yuansheng felt fear. If he was not injured, he might be able to talk to this person in front of him. But in his current state, any quasi-mortal king could take his life. "Be my subordinate quietly. Otherwise, I'll make sure you'll never be able to reincarnate." The Black Sect Master stretched out his hand, and a very thick black fog wrapped around him. In the thick fog, screams kept coming out. One could feel how miserable Zhou Yuansheng was at this moment. Chapter 1605. A few minutes later, the black fog dissipated. Zhou Yuansheng lay on the ground and kept twitching in pain. His whole body was surrounded by a faint black aura. Obviously, he had become the Black Sect Master's man. "What did you do to me?" Zhou Yuansheng still maintained a trace of reason. He raised his head with difficulty and looked at the Black Sect Master as he asked. "Nothing. I just healed all the injuries in your body. Of course, because of this, you will also pay a price." The Black Sect Master smiled sinisterly. "As long as you listen to my orders, I guarantee that you will continue to sit in the position of Sect Master of the Qinglin sect and get benefits that you didn't dare to imagine before." Despicable. Zhou Yuansheng secretly clenched his fist and felt the abundant immortal power in his body. He got up and rushed directly toward the Black Sect Master. "Do you think you can still hurt me now?" The Sect Master of the Black Sect stood in place, completely ignoring Zhou Yuansheng's attack. When his fist was about to land on the head of the Black Sect, he suddenly stopped. Zhou Yuansheng was shocked. Just now, he had used almost all of his strength in that punch. Even if he couldn't kill the Black Sect Master, he would have been seriously injured. But now, he suddenly felt that he was out of control. He was frozen in place. No matter how hard he tried, his body didn't move. "What? Didn't you want to attack me? I'm standing in front of you." The Black Sect Master stood in place and looked at him and asked coldly, "I have no enmity with you, and I don't want to attack Jiangchen. You can cooperate with Zhou Wanli. Please let me go." Zhou Yuansheng gritted his teeth and understood that in the current situation, it was impossible to hurt the person in front of him. He even understood that this person had not only healed his injuries, but had also turned him into a puppet. "It's too late to say this now. Do as I say, and you can keep your life. Otherwise, I have the possibility of killing you at any time." The Black Sect Master turned his back and disappeared into the secret passage in the blink of an eye. "It's over." Zhou Yuansheng's eyes were dull, and he did not know what to do. He didn't want to obey this person's orders, but if he didn't, since this person could control his actions, he could definitely kill him directly. However, if he obeyed, it would be fine to kill Jiangchen now. If he obeyed this person's orders in the future, should he obey or not? However, after Zhou Yuansheng pondered for 2 minutes, a command suddenly appeared in his mind. His complicated expression instantly stiffened, and he slowly walked out of the secret passage. He looked no different from a puppet. Jiangchen didn't know about this. After returning from the Great Elder's place, Jiangchen met up with Bai Xiaoyan and Bai Fengyu. The three of them sat in a room with no one else. Jiangchen didn't hide anything and directly told the two of them everything. Sure enough, he has joined forces with Ku Wanjun. However, Ku Wanjun was seriously injured by the giant ape, so he probably doesn't have the strength to fight against us. However, we have to be careful of the Black Sect Master. His strength is much stronger than mine, and the Great Elder of the Qian, his sect, is also injured. If he really wants to fight against us, I'm afraid we won't be able to withstand it." Bai Xiaoyan frowned and carefully analyzed this matter. If only Bai Xinling was here. Jiangchen scratched his head. "You brat. How can you call out your master's name?" Bai Xiaoyan patted Jiangchen's head and said, "But now I'm curious about one thing. How dare this Black Sect Master attack you? He's obviously a person from the immortal world, so he should abide by the two agreements. Could it be that his strength is comparable to the great elder of the Qianhe sect, so he dares to violate this rule? I also have the same doubts. Hearing this, Jiangchen slightly frowned and said, at that time, Xianjun wanted to avenge his sword child, but because of the two agreements, he didn't do anything to me. Bai Xiaoyan shrugged and said, you're right. If Master was here, this person would definitely not dare to be so arrogant. However, he has already arrived in an unknown area of the immortal world, so I'm afraid he has no time to care about us. How about we leave this place? Now that the treasure pavilion has been guarded by the sects outside the eastern domain, if we want to get the treasures inside, we will definitely offend these sections. Bai Fengyu was worried about Jiang Chen's safety, but she was also afraid that Jiang Chen wouldn't want to listen to her. After pondering for a while, she couldn't help but say it. Don't worry, let's take a look first. The mechanisms and traps in the treasure pavilion are not something they can break in a short time. Jiang Chen shook his head. Little junior brother is now half the owner of the tomb of the immortal emperor. Without his permission, the treasure pavilion will still be ours in the end. It's just a matter of time. And since little junior brother has already obtained the inheritance of the immortal emperor, if you encounter danger, maybe the giant ape in the barrier will come out to help. Bai Xiaoyan was not so pessimistic. On the contrary, she was full of hope for the treasures in the tomb of the immortal emperor. What inheritance of the immortal emperor? Jiang Chun was a little speechless. Didn't you already get the recognition of the immortal emperor? You also got the immortal technique left by the immortal emperor. Isn't that equivalent to getting the inheritance of the immortal emperor? By the way, little junior brother, I think you should hurry up and take a look at the immortal technique. Maybe if you comprehend it, you can fight with the sect master of the Black Sect. Bai Xiaoyan patted Jiang Chen's shoulder and said earnestly, I'm now at the third level of the true immortal realm. If this is the inheritance of the immortal emperor, then I might be able to fight with an immortal king. But it's just an ordinary immortal technique. Even if I learn it, I'll be killed by a slap in front of the sect master of the Black Sect. Jiang Chen still felt helpless. Letting him, a third-level true immortal, fight with a fifth or sixth-level immortal king was no different from sending himself to death. It's better to read and learn the light-attracting technique as soon as possible. The things left behind by the immortal emperor will definitely only benefit you. Bai Xiaoyan stopped smiling and said in a deep voice, I know, but now is not the time to read this immortal technique. Jiang Chen nodded. Just as he was talking to Bai Xiaoyan, two people quietly approached the room. They were Zhou Yuansheng and Chou Wanli, who were controlled by the sect master of the Black Sect. The two of them had become puppets controlled by the sect master of the Black Sect. Their thoughts had been sealed, and they were like walking corpses. There was only one goal in their minds, and that was to kill Jiang Chen. Wait a minute. Just as Bai Xiaoyan was about to continue speaking, Jiang Chen suddenly made a gesture of silence and said with a frown. Chapter 1606. There's a situation. Bai Xiaoyan also reacted in an instant. Yes, someone is approaching us. Jiang Chen nodded and said, Fengyu, take care of yourself and don't interfere. Gao Jing and our people aren't simple. Okay, Bai Fengyu softly agreed. Just as Jiang Chen held his breath and was about to open the door to see the situation, the door in front of him suddenly exploded. Jiang Chen immediately moved sideways and dodged the attack. After the attack destroyed the door, it directly entered the room. If Jiang Chen didn't dodge and still stood in the same place, he was afraid that he would have been hit. Sect Master Cho, Sect Master Zhou, what do you want to do? After seeing who was standing outside, Jiang Chen dispelled some of his worries. In the passage, these two people were seriously injured. Even if they joined forces now, they shouldn't be his opponent, not to mention that Bai Xiaoyan was standing behind him. Jiang Chen's words didn't make them have any fluctuations. The two walked forward like puppets, urging the immortal qi in their body to get closer to Jiang Chen. Two sect masters, if you come any closer, don't blame me for being impolite. Jiang Chen frowned slightly and gradually circulated his immortal qi. As long as these two people came closer, he would not hesitate to take action. However, Chou Wanli and Zhou Yuanxing's expressions didn't change at all. Jiang Qin's eyes darkened. If these two sect masters were not injured, he wouldn't be able to go against them. But now that they were seriously injured, it shouldn't be a problem to deal with them. All of a sudden, before Jiang Qin could launch an attack, a voice suddenly appeared. A pitch-black giant python appeared behind Zhou Yuanxing. Sticking out its tongue, it opened its bloody mouth and dashed toward Jiang Qin to swallow him. "Little junior brother, be careful," Bai Xiaoyan shouted in a low voice. A white light emerged from her hand, and then a barrier tightly wrapped around Jiang Qin. The giant python's fangs fiercely bit down on the barrier. Such a strong, immortal energy fluctuation made Jiang Qin unable to withstand it, and he took 2 steps back. "What's going on?" After stabilizing himself, Jiang Qin frowned. The ferocity of this attack was not something that they could block. They could even feel that it was even more ferocious than when they were not injured. According to the injuries they suffered in the passage, how could they have recovered in less than a day and even become stronger than before? "Sect Leader Zhou, Sect Leader Qiu, you are both immortal kings. Are you going to violate the covenant of the 2 realms and the 1,000-year covenant by attacking Jiang Qin, a mere practitioner from the realm of true immortals?" Bai Xiaoyan didn't have time to answer Jiang Qin's question. He stepped forward with a slender white sword in his hand and stared at the 2 people standing in front of him, berating them in a low voice. "Kill Jiang Qin." Qiu Wanli's eyes were red. After Zhou Yuanxing's attack did not have any effect, his body wriggled rapidly. A moment later, his clothes burst, and he turned into a beast. The Wanshou sect really lives up to its name. Looking at the fierce beast standing in front of Bai Xiaoyan, Bai Fengyu's beautiful face turned pale. The fierce beast's aura made the immortal energy in her body flow, somewhat sluggish. "It's really strange. The 2 of them clearly killed each other in the passage and were seriously injured. How could their strength be so strong now? Could it be that they took drugs?" Jiang Qin retreated to Bai Fengyu's side. The current situation was not something he could handle. With his cultivation of the 3rd level of true immortal, plus the combat experience of 10 lifetimes and the cultivation methods and immortal skills he possessed, it was not easy for him to cross 2 levels to face a golden immortal and a celestial immortal. If he went all out, he might be able to exchange a few blows with a celestial immortal. But against such a powerful immortal king, there was nothing he could do. In the face of absolute strength, anything he did was useless. Could it be that they worked together to put on a show and were not injured at all? With Jiang Qin standing by her side, Bai Fengyu gradually calmed down. It was as if as long as the man beside her was there, even if the sky collapsed, it would not be important. It shouldn't be. Recalling the situation he saw with his own eyes, Jiang Qin shook his head. While he was talking to Bai Fengyu, Bai Xiaoyan had already started fighting with him. Zhou Yuanxing stood stiffly on the spot. The black python that he transformed into kept attacking Bai Xiaoyan. On the other side, the fierce beast that Qiu Wanli had transformed into also fought with Bai Xiaoyan, as if he did not care about his life. After exchanging a few blows, Bai Xiaoyan felt that something was wrong. Although the 2 of them had indeed reached the 2nd level of Immortal King, they did not have any combat experience. It was just like when Bai Robed Immortal King was in the Heaven Secret Pavilion. In order to train their combat experience, he used immortal energy to condense dummies that only knew how to attack. "No matter who you are, since Master has handed Junior Brother to me, I will protect his safety. If you want to kill him, you have to step over my body first." After a few exchanges, Bai Xiaoyun's aura became a little chaotic. She held the thin sword in her hand and took 2 steps back, panting slightly as she said in a low voice, "Bai Xiaoyun, this matter has nothing to do with you. Get out of my way, and I will let you live." As if hearing Bai Xiaoyun's words, the fierce beast that Qiu Wanli had transformed into opened its mouth and said in a gloomy voice, "You insist on killing Jiang Qin. Aren't you afraid of that person?" Bai Xiaoyan sneered as she stared at the murderer in front of her and asked coldly. The person he was talking about was not Bai Xianling, who had not returned, but the guardian of Kunlun's celestial mountain, Zhou Kunlun. With the 1,000-year promise and the pact of the 2 realms, plus the fact that Jiang Qin was a disciple of the 9th mountain of Kunlun celestial mountain, if anyone dared to violate the pact, Zhou Kunlun would not sit idly by. However, there was something that Bai Shaoren did not understand. Previously in the bamboo forest, the sect leader of the Black Sect had attacked Jiang Chun, and now Qiu Wanli and Zhou Yuanxing had suddenly appeared. They had violated the pact of the two realms. Even Xian Jun had to abide by it, so how could these people dare to violate it? Do you think the pact of the two realms can restrain me? The gloomy voice continued. As soon as the voice fell, the fierce beast roared and charged toward Bai Xiaoyun fiercely again. Boom! Bai Xiaoyun did not dare to underestimate it. She did not have time to rest and immediately rushed forward with her celestial force. At the same time, the celestial force gathered on her arm and condensed into a set of armor. She clenched her fist and punched toward the fierce beast's face. When the fist was about to hit, the black python suddenly rose into the air and bit Bai Xiaoyun's leg with its teeth dripping with stinky saliva. Hiss! Saint Healing Skill. After feeling the pain, a green light immediately appeared on Bai Xiaoyun's body and healed the injury on her leg. However, when she was distracted, the fist did not hit the fierce beast's face. The fierce beast seized this opportunity and reached out to grab Bai Xiaoyun's head. Once the fierce beast of the second realm of the immortal king realm was caught by him, he could crush Bai Xiaoyun's head in an instant. Chapter 1607. Just at this critical moment, Yi Zichen's eyes lit up. Two cold arrows were shot out. One shot landed on Zhou Yuanxing, who was standing still. The other shot directly penetrated the body of the beast, causing its hand that was about to grab Bai Xiaoyun's head to stop in midair. Bai Xiaoyun didn't think and immediately escaped. Phew! Standing on the ground, Bai Xiaoyun took 2 deep breaths. If he had been a second later, he might have really lost his life. The cold arrow shot into Zhou Yuanxing's body, and the giant python immediately dissipated. Qiu Wanli's beast form also came into contact with the arrow and fell to the ground from midair. Just as Bai Xiaoyun heaved a sigh of relief and was about to step forward and kill them to prevent future trouble, a black fog blew past, and the 2 bodies disappeared in front of him. Seeing this scene, Bai Xiaoyun understood what was going on. Eldest senior brother, are you okay? Jiangchen walked to his side and asked. Just a small injury, it's not a big problem. Bai Xiaoyun shook his head. Now I know why they dared to violate the pact of the two realms and the pact of Kunlun to attack you. Oh, why? Jiangchen raised his eyebrows. He was still very curious about this. Because they're not humans at all. The sect masters of the Thousand Beasts sect and the Green Qilin sect have already become puppets of the sect master of the Black sect. Although they have the strength of an immortal king, in the end, they're no longer in the category of cultivators, so they're not bound by the pact of the two realms. Of course, this is only my guess. I don't know whether it is accurate or not. Bai Xiaoyun shook his head. When he withdrew his true qi, he suddenly felt pain on his thigh. Rolling up his robe, he could clearly see 2 rows of sharp teeth marks on his thigh. If not for the protection of his immortal qi, his leg would have been immediately torn off when the giant python bit him. But even so, his leg was still injured. I just killed someone from their sect. Do they have to chase me so relentlessly? Jiang Chun was a little helpless. He had just seen how Zhou Yuanxing and Qiu Wanli escaped from here. This situation was the same as when the sect master of the Black Sect took Ku Wanjun away in the Barrier of Light. Thinking about it, these two were in the same situation as Ku Jie. By the way, what happened just now? Bai Xiaoyun put down her robe and didn't continue to care about the injury on her leg. With the continuous treatment of the Saint Healing technique, it wouldn't take long for the injury to be completely healed. I triggered the mechanism in the tomb, Jiangchen said honestly. You can completely control the hidden weapons here. Hearing this, Bai Xiaoyun asked with some surprise. At first, he thought that the book could only help them understand the traps in the tomb. But later, he found that it was not only that, it could even trigger the traps. But now, Jiangchen was able to use the hidden weapons in the tomb to attack accurately. This was undoubtedly a great piece of news. If that was the case, then they would have the final say in the Immortal Emperor's tomb. With the mechanisms left behind by the Immortal Emperor, even if the sect master of the Black Sect stood in front of them, he would not have a good time. I don't know either. Jiang Chen shook his head and said, he just saw that Bai Xiaoyan was in danger, and he had no choice but to activate the mechanism according to the method in the book. He thought that it would be best if he could directly injure Zhou Yuanxing and Qiu Wanli. As it turned out, he did it, but what Jiang Chen didn't know was whether it was good luck or the mechanism was really under his control according to his mind. I think after we get out of the Immortal Emperor's tomb, we need to find Master's location, Bai Xiaoyan said as she limped into the room and closed the door tightly. Jiang Chen looked at her sideways. Bai Xianling disappeared to an unknown area in the immortal world to find the whereabouts of her mother. Although Jiang Chen was a little unhappy, he still hoped that Bai Xianling could do it. The strength of the sect master of the Black Sect is not something that I can fight against. Moreover, this person is too strange. Even if those immortal kings from the immortal mountains are following you, they can't possibly guard you all day long. I think unless Master takes action, it is not possible for us to get rid of him. Bai Xiaoyan sighed. When he was facing the two puppets, he could clearly feel the pressure. Not to mention in the bamboo forest, the other party only needed to release a barrier to completely control him. Big senior brother, if he is so strong, why didn't he just take action against me directly? Jiang Chen asked. Maybe he has some scruples, but when he took action against you and me last time, he obviously didn't have any scruples. Bai Xiaoyan shook her head. She couldn't guess what this person was thinking at all, but the only thing that I can be sure of is that this person will definitely not give up. In the Immortal Emperor's tomb, he will definitely have other ways to take action against you. Jiang Chen nodded slightly and did not continue speaking. But in his heart, he was thinking about this matter and thinking of a way to deal with it. The next day, Jiang Chen did not take it to heart. Instead, he went to the vicinity of the treasure pavilion. Last night, when Zhou Yuanxing and Qiu Wanli took action, there was also a problem in the treasure pavilion. Several sects of the southern region directly broke into the treasure pavilion, wanted to take advantage of the night to steal the treasures inside. But when they entered, they accidentally triggered the mechanism inside. Except for an expert who had just stepped into the Immortal King realm, everyone else died inside. When this news spread, several large sects, including the Yin-Yang sect, were all a little unhappy. They had long known that the treasure pavilion was not so easy to enter. The reason why they fought with Su Qian was that they wanted to completely gain control of this place, then find a way to enter, avoid all the traps, and take the treasures out of the pavilion. But now, there were small sects who didn't have eyes who went in. It would be fine if they all died inside, but there were people who escaped alive and spread the news. Then, the eastern region would know that it wasn't that they didn't want to enter, but that they didn't dare to. And yesterday's rule would no longer be valid. It would become that whoever had the strength could enter, and it would no longer belong to their sections. Just as they thought, the sects of the eastern region were overjoyed. They all understood that these sects were useless here. They couldn't enter the treasure pavilion at all. The treasures in the pavilion would belong to the sects of the eastern region sooner or later. Have you figured out the mechanism inside? Sun Sheng was sitting on a rattan chair. After being seriously injured by the Great Elder yesterday, he couldn't even move and could only sit on it. After the incident last night, he immediately ordered all the disciples of the Yin-Yang sect to go inside and figure out the situation. He wanted to find out the situation inside before the sects of the eastern region made a comeback. Chapter 16:08. Beside Sun Sheng, a person who looked like a trusted disciple reported in a low voice, "We only touched the first floor. As soon as our people entered, they triggered the mechanism inside. Fortunately, we were prepared and all of us escaped. Otherwise, we would have ended up like those people." The things left behind by the Immortal Emperor are really not something that ordinary people can touch. But the more difficult it is to enter, the more mechanisms there are. This proves that there are definitely unusual treasures inside. If we can get them, we will be the biggest winners this time. Sun Sheng looked at the treasure pavilion in front of him and clenched his fists. Now, in order to get the things inside, he had been seriously injured. If the treasures were taken away by other sects, his injuries would have been in vain. However, just as he was about to send people into the treasure pavilion, he found that the sects of the eastern region were gradually approaching. "Elder Sun, what's going on?" Yesterday, You drove out the sects of the eastern region, but now half a day has passed, and you haven't searched for treasures in the treasure pavilion. If you don't want to go in, you don't have to stay here. Go back to where you came from. The sect leader of the eastern region, who was walking at the front, sneered when he saw that these sects that did not belong to the eastern region were still here. What do you mean? After fighting with your first elder of the China sect of the eastern region yesterday, this place no longer belongs to the eastern region. Hurry up and leave here. Sun Sheng was a little angry. Could it be that you can't get rid of the mechanisms inside? The sect leader did not take the injured Sun Sheng seriously at all. When he spoke, his eyes were already looking at the treasure pavilion. It has nothing to do with you whether I can get rid of it or not. Sun Sheng seemed to have been stabbed in his nerves, and his face instantly became a little horrified. How can it have nothing to do with you? According to past experience, the tomb of the immortal emperor will only appear for about a month before disappearing. If you don't have the ability, don't waste time here and leave the opportunity to the eastern region. If you don't get the treasures inside and stop us in time, who will bear the loss? The sect leader still had a smile on his face. Obviously, the injured Sun Sheng was no longer able to shoulder the burden of the Yin Yang sect, nor could he bear the treasure pavilion in front of him. Will bear the loss. The two immortal kings who had fought with the great elder earlier stood out. Well, if you can bear it, please go to the treasure pavilion and take the treasure out. If you can take it out, we will not say a word. I will also guarantee that you can take it out. But if you can't, will you have to give up your position? Suddenly, an aged voice sounded out. Everyone hurriedly looked over. Among the sects of the eastern region, several protectors of the Thousand Harmony sect supported the great elder and stood at the very front. It's only a matter of time before we go in. Why should we go in now just because you want us to? Moreover, First Elder Su Qian, you were defeated yesterday. Isn't it unreasonable for you to say these words now? Sun Sheng did not intend to give up just like that. I've already made a concession once. Do you really think that the eastern region can't do anything to you? The great elder snorted coldly. If the sects of the eastern region really want to go in, you can send your disciples in to get the treasure. If you can get it, then we have nothing to say. If you can't, please abide by the rules of the game and leave. Seeing that the great elder did not want to spare them, Sun Sheng quickly came up with a countermeasure in his heart. Almost all of the small sects from last night had been annihilated inside. The disciples that he had sent in after him had almost died as well. It was a good opportunity for the sects of the eastern region to go in and die. In this way, not only could they shut their mouths, but they could also take the opportunity to learn about the other mechanisms in the treasure pavilion. You take people in? Remember to be careful. There are countless mechanisms set up by the immortal emperors in the treasure pavilion. Once triggered, it's very likely that you'll be buried inside, the great elder said to a protector beside him. In any case, he had not killed the three immortal kings yesterday. Since he was in the wrong, he had to agree with Sun Sheng's proposal. Understood. I'll be very careful. The protector nodded and waved his hand. A few disciples of the China sect followed closely behind. The sects of the eastern region and the sects of the northern and southern regions stood on both sides of the treasure pavilion. Everyone's eyes were focused on the protector and his disciples. Compared to the great elder's worry, Sun Sheng and the others looked like they were watching a show. Yesterday, the sect master of the small sect who had just stepped into the immortal king realm had barely escaped from inside. If the protector and his disciples of the China sect, who were only immortal venerables, entered the treasure pavilion, they would definitely die. Don't let me down. The great elder stared at them and clasped his hands together as he said, Can you control the mechanisms so that they won't be triggered? Although Bai Xiaoyan was not from the eastern region, she did not want to see the shameless expressions of these people from the northern region. She tilted her head and asked Jiang Chun in a low voice. No. Jiang Chun shook his head. On the surface, he answered Bai Xiaoyan like this, but Jiang Chun did not tell the truth. He was already familiar with the art of mechanisms. It should not be a problem for him to control the mechanisms in the treasure pavilion. However, Jiang Chun also wanted to get the things in the treasure pavilion. Moreover, this was a battle between the eastern region and the northern region. It had nothing to do with him. Even though the great elder had helped him many times before, it was not good to intervene now. Under everyone's gaze, the protector led more than a dozen disciples into the treasure pavilion. Just wait. In 5 minutes at most, they will all die inside. Sun Sheng immediately laughed disdainfully. He did not restrain his voice at all. It could also be said that he was saying this for the great elder to hear. Just as he finished speaking, some noises suddenly came from the treasure pavilion. Jiang Chun frowned slightly. He did not want to help at first, but his hands hidden in his sleeves secretly made a few seals according to the art of mechanisms. TSK, it seems that my expectations are a little too high. In less than a minute, they can't hold on anymore. Hearing these noises, Sun Sheng laughed out loud. On the side of the eastern region, more than a dozen sects were all sweating. Great Elder, Su Mo only has the strength of immortal venerables. Yesterday, even immortal kings almost died inside. A slightly stronger protector frowned and could not help but speak. Don't talk nonsense. Before he could finish speaking, the great elder interrupted. Chapter 1609. Everyone thought that the people from the China sect must have died inside, and that the immortal venerable might have a chance to escape. However, as time passed, the door to the treasure pavilion remained closed, even though there were sounds coming from inside from time to time. What's going on? The smile on Sun Sheng's face gradually disappeared. Although he didn't know what had happened inside, it made him feel uneasy. Maybe they've been killed by the traps, the disciple beside him said. Pa! Sun Sheng raised his hand and slapped him on the head. Can't you hear the sounds inside? If they're already dead, how could there be sounds coming out? That person covered his head and didn't dare to continue speaking. The sounds from inside the treasure pavilion were still coming out from time to time. Not only Sun Sheng, but almost everyone was very curious and wanted to know what was going on inside. Half an hour later, the door to the treasure pavilion was opened. Immediately after, under the shocked gazes of the crowd, the protector of the China sect walked out with the disciples behind him. They were holding many scrolls and wooden boxes in their hands. Great Elder, these are the things we brought out from the first level. The protector pulled out the arrow that was shot in his arm and limped to the Great Elder. He handed over the scrolls and wooden boxes in his hand. He stretched out his hand. Although the disciples of the China sect were all injured, they had all walked out alive. There are traps inside, right? Seeing the protector like this, the Great Elder asked with some heartache. Yes, and it's very dangerous. Maybe we were too lucky and avoided those fatal traps, but we were still injured. The protector sighed and gritted his teeth to endure the pain that was coming from his body. It's good enough that we can come out alive. You guys immediately protect them and bring them back to the sect to recuperate. The Great Elder patted his shoulder in relief and immediately turned to the people beside him. The scrolls and wooden boxes in his hand were all handed over to the other protectors for safekeeping. This is impossible. The scene in front of him caused a great shock to Sun Sheng. He stood up from his chair and shouted as he pointed at the Great Elder. He was aware of the traps in the treasure pavilion. Yesterday, when he had just arrived here and was still unfamiliar with the situation, he had led the experts of the sect to barge in and had almost lost his life inside. Last night, there were other sects that entered, and almost all of them were wiped out. But now, the people of the Thousand Harmonies sect were only a protector with the strength of an immortal venerable and a dozen golden immortals and immortal disciples. If he didn't see it with his own eyes, he definitely wouldn't believe that it was true. Elder son, the truth is right in front of you. Your sects in the Northern Territory are not qualified to enter the treasure pavilion, nor are you able to take out the treasures inside. Therefore, it's better for you to return to where you came from. Don't waste everyone's time here. The worry on the Great Elder's face disappeared as he looked at him with a cold smile. Something's wrong. Sun Sheng waved his hand and quickly figured out what was going on. He continued, those people must have triggered all the traps. Therefore, there are no traps in the treasure pavilion now. Our disciples of the Yin Yang sect can also take things out from there. Well, if you have the ability, then go in. The Great Elder waved his hand indifferently. You guys go inside immediately and bring something out for me. Sun Sheng ordered as he pointed at the people of the sect behind him, including the disciple who had just been slapped by him. Second Elder, We don't know how many traps there are in the treasure pavilion. We just sent some disciples in 2 hours ago. If they hadn't reacted quickly, I'm afraid they would have died in there. None of the disciples dared to go in. 2 hours ago, he was ordered by Sun Sheng to go into the treasure pavilion. However, as soon as he opened the door, a trap was immediately triggered. Fortunately, they were mentally prepared and immediately turned around to leave. Otherwise, they would definitely be left in there. Even the people of the Thousand Harmonies sect can come out alive. If we are suppressed by them today, I'm afraid our Yin-Yang sect will be ridiculed by the other sects in the Eastern Territory. Sun Sheng gritted his teeth and scolded in a low voice. Under the pressure of Sun Sheng, the disciples of the Yin-Yang sect could only brace themselves and go forward. When they arrived in front of the treasure pavilion, their legs could not help but tremble, and cold sweat flowed down their skin. However, after looking back at Sun Sheng, they still mustered up their courage and went forward. They also understood that if they did not enter the treasure pavilion today, they would not be able to live in the sect in the future. They braced themselves, gritted their teeth, and pushed open the door of the treasure pavilion. The moment they entered, Jiang Qin's hands, which were hidden under his sleeves, changed the seals again, and all the traps inside returned to normal. Great Elder Su, since your people from the Eastern Territory can enter, then our Yin-Yang sect will naturally have no problem. If my people can bring out the treasures from inside, I hope you can abide by the previous rules and leave here. Sun Sheng looked at the Great Elder proudly. No! The Great Elder was about to speak. A few screams came from inside the treasure pavilion. Then, under everyone's gaze, the door of the treasure pavilion was opened, and a person from the Yin-Yang sect scrambled out. There were several iron rods, the length of an arm, stuck in his back, and his aura was extremely weak. The moment he crawled out of the treasure pavilion, his head tilted to the side and he fell to the ground. Without looking, it was obvious that this person had been killed by the traps in the treasure pavilion. The rest of the people inside had probably suffered the same fate. The smile on Sun Sheng's face froze. He did not understand what was going on. Why could the people from the China sect enter for so long and even bring out the treasures? But the people from his sect had only entered for less than a minute and ended up in such a miserable state. Great Elder Su, how do you explain this? Sun Sheng pointed at the Great Elder and questioned. Elder Sun, from what I hear, it seems that you want to blame this on me? Hearing this, the Great Elder laughed out loud. Don't tell me you think that I'm so strong that I can even tamper with the tomb of the immortal emperor? Then why can your people come out alive, but my people all died in less than a minute after entering? Is this a coincidence? Sun Sheng's face was gloomy. If it were not for his serious injuries, he would have personally gone into the treasure pavilion to see what was going on. Then I can only say that your people from the Yin-Yang sect are not qualified to enter the treasure pavilion. This is the tomb of the immortal emperor that was discovered in our Eastern Territory. Naturally, it belongs to the ancient immortal emperor of our Eastern Territory. Shouldn't we take care of our own people? The Great Elder asked with a smile. Chapter 16:10. These words, undoubtedly, it was a punch to Sun Sheng's heart. It made him so angry that a mouthful of blood was pushed to his throat. Looking at the sects around him, Sun Sheng knew that once he vomited blood, it meant that he was completely defeated in the battle with Qianhe's sect. Therefore, he endured the bloody taste in his mouth and swallowed the blood into his stomach. If you don't believe me, you can let the other sects in the northern region have a try. The Great Elder crossed his arms. Although he didn't know what was going on, he faintly felt that except for the sects in the eastern region, there would be a problem if others went in. No! Sun Sheng firmly refused. Oh, then what do you mean? Let the sects in the eastern region go in and bring out something? The Great Elder laughed. You pick a few people from the eastern region, and I'll pick a few people from the northern region. We'll enter the treasure pavilion together. I'd like to see what's going on inside. Sun Sheng's eyes turned, and a better idea appeared in his mind. This was the best way to prove that Su Qian didn't tamper with the treasure. No problem, the Great Elder agreed. Which sect in the northern region wants to try? Sun Sheng shouted. Let our sect do it. I don't believe in this evil. Could it be that only the sects in the eastern region can enter the tomb of the immortal emperor, But we can't? Not far from Sun Sheng, a fat man with a fierce face said. Northern region, sect master of horizontal blade sect, Lu Jie. Southern region, withered tree sect, Zhang Lin. The two of them spoke almost at the same time. They both took a step forward and cupped their hands at the great elder. Looking at them, the great elder shook his head helplessly. He had never heard of these two sections. Moreover, the person who spoke was only an immortal venerable. Although it was considered good in the entire immortal world, it was obviously not enough here. In the tomb of the immortal emperor, there were many similar sects and forces. This group of people came to try their luck. Now that they were going in with the people from the eastern region, they believed that there shouldn't be any problems. That was why they stood out. After all, the treasures they brought out could be taken out of the eastern region and become their things. First Elder Su, our northern region and southern region have sent people out. Your eastern region can't possibly be a bunch of cowards, right? Sun Sheng was naturally emboldened when someone stood up for him. He didn't know what would happen after this group of people entered the treasure pavilion. Perhaps it was just as Su Qian had said. As long as the people from the eastern region entered, there would not be any traps. Then, the people from the northern and southern regions would naturally benefit. If it didn't work, everyone would die inside. For the former result, he could say that it was just a coincidence that the people from the Thousand Harmonies sect had gone in just now. The mechanism didn't trigger because they were from the eastern region. After all, the disciples from the northern region were also inside. The second result could also be explained as a coincidence. Previously, no mechanism had been triggered, so it was a coincidence. Now, the people from the eastern region had entered, but they still died inside. No matter what, he had already thought of a countermeasure. Everyone, is there anyone who wants to fight? The first elder turned around and looked at the sects of the eastern region standing behind him. These people took a step back, and no one dared to step forward. What a joke! They clearly saw the situation just now. If something went wrong, they would definitely die inside. If they didn't go in, they could still pick up benefits from other places in the tomb of the immortal emperor. Seeing that no one spoke, the first elder sighed quietly and prepared to send out the other protectors in the sect again. I'll do it. Before he could say anything, Jiang Qin's voice rang out. Third level true immortal? What's the situation in the eastern region? They actually let a kid at the third level true immortal do it? Don't underestimate him. I know the person beside him. She's by Xiaoyan from the Tianji Pavilion. She has the cultivation of an immortal king. This kid looks a little familiar. He seems to be a disciple of the Kunlun Celestial Mountain in the northern region. I remember that there were many bad rumors about him in the Kunlun Celestial Mountain. Why is someone from the Kunlun Celestial Mountain standing here in the eastern region? You don't know this, right? He was driven out by the Kunlun Celestial Mountain. After Jiang Qin spoke, many people began to whisper. Of course, most of them did not believe Jiang Qin. Those who had entered the treasure pavilion before were at least disciples of the golden immortal realm, or even the immortal realm. What was the difference between a true immortal and an ordinary person here? Can you do it? The first elder waved to Jiang Qin and asked in a low voice. Since they don't want to go in, I'll have to go in. Moreover, I can get the treasures left behind by the immortal emperor. Why not? Jiang Qin said with a smile. To tell you the truth, I don't know why the mechanism in the treasure pavilion didn't trigger when the people of the Qin sect entered. But from the perspective of the people of the Yin-Yang sect, it's still very dangerous inside. You're a little weak, although you have some talent. Even a newly promoted immortal king can be seriously injured inside. I'm worried about you. The first elder frowned and looked at Jiang Qin. His words revealed deep worry. I'll give it a try. Jiang Qin did not make any guarantees. Walking to the front of the treasure pavilion, Jiang Qin saw the disdainful eyes of the two people at a glance. You really don't know your own strength. How dare you come here when you're only at the third level of the true immortal realm? If you die inside, no one will collect your corpse. Lu Jie, the sect master of the Cross-Saber sect, glanced at Jiang Qin. Feeling the weak cultivation of the person beside him, he almost laughed out loud. Before Jiang Qin could speak, Bai Xiaoyan took the initiative to step forward and faintly emitted the aura of an immortal king. You don't have to worry about that. If you have the time, you might as well think about your own funeral. Previously, the few sects in the northern region had no good consequences. Humph, let's wait and see. Lujia did not dare to say anything more. He did not dare to offend an immortal king. Under the gaze of the crowd, Jiang Chun and Bai Shaoyan took the lead to enter, followed by the people of the Cross-Saber sect and the Deadwood sect. Crack! The door of the treasure pavilion was tightly closed. The first elder broke out in a cold sweat, worried about Jiang Chen's safety. On the other hand, because of the few small sects that had entered, Sun Sheng and the others did not have much change in mood. Inside the treasure pavilion, the moment they entered, Jiang Chen secretly made a seal to temporarily disable the mechanism inside. Senior brother, don't worry. I've already controlled the mechanism inside. Jiang Chen was worried that Bai Shaoyan did not know this, which might affect the business. So he moved his lips slightly and wrapped his immortal qi in a voice that was transmitted to his side. At the same time, he gave Bai Fengyu a firm look. Bai Fengyu had been with Jiang Chun for so long, so she naturally understood what he meant. However, the people of the two sects stood in place and did not dare to move, for fear that they would trigger the mechanism in the treasure pavilion. Chapter 16:11. The ground was littered with corpses, which made their hearts turn cold. However, Jiang Chen and the other two didn't care about this. They stepped over the corpses and began to search the first floor. This action scared the sections. What are you doing? Stop! Don't you know that there are traps inside? If you want to die, we don't want to accompany you. Zhang Lin pointed at Jiang Chen. He didn't dare to speak loudly for fear that he would trigger the traps. He could only scold them in a low voice. Especially the piles of corpses and the traps that had been triggered, they were scared to the extreme. If you're afraid of death, then get out. Jiang Chen answered him calmly. Then he went on searching the place. You. Lu Jia also stood in place and didn't dare to move. He could only watch as Jiang Chen flipped the wooden shells back and forth. Jiang Chen and the other two didn't continue to pay attention to them. If they had the time to talk, they might as well look at the treasures inside. After all, they didn't need to fight with the other sects to take them out. They could directly keep them in their storage rings. However, it was a pity that there was almost nothing useful on the wooden shelves on the first floor. Why don't we go up and take a look? Who knows, there might be something good. Bai Shaoyan stepped on the corpses and walked to the stairs. She stuck her head up. Anyway, the traps inside were all controlled by Jiang Chun. Not to mention walking. Even rolling around inside wouldn't be a problem. Okay. Jiang Chun nodded and led Bai Shaoyan up the stairs. In the blink of an eye, the three of them disappeared in front of them. What do we do? Lu Jia looked at the sect disciples behind him and asked Zhang Lin. What else can we do? If they can move around like this, we can definitely do it too. Zhang Lin tentatively took a step forward. After seeing that there were no traps triggered, he felt a little more confident and quickly stepped forward. Quick, take everything out of here. Our two sects will split it equally. Lu Jia took a deep breath and hurriedly called out to the disciples. They walked up the stairs. Jiang Chen saw that the second floor was almost the same as the first floor. There was a round table in the middle and wooden shelves around it. The scrolls here were obviously better than the ones on the first floor, but they were still not up to his standards. Little junior brother, why don't you just kill them? I think the things on the lower level are worth a lot. Bai Shaoyan said as she flipped through the scrolls on the wooden shelf. There were some decent sword arts and immortal arts here. He took out his storage ring and put everything into it. Although this thing was useless to celestial kings, the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion still had junior brothers and sisters. Previously, when Master was here, the pavilion was so poor that aside from some moves and celestial techniques that Master personally taught, there were no scrolls at all for them to study on their own. These things just so happened to fill in some of the gaps in the Divine Secrets Pavilion. If they were to recruit disciples in the future, they would have something to teach them. Let's go in together. If we go out alive after they die, wouldn't the people outside be suspicious? Jiang Chen shook his head. He had already figured out the situation when he entered the treasure pavilion. Instead of attacking them, it was better to take the opportunity to go to the top floor of the treasure pavilion and take out the things inside. Even if the people outside would avoid the traps and enter the pavilion, no one would have thought that the best treasure in the treasure pavilion would fall into their hands. Then what are you waiting for? Let's go. Bai Xiaoyan waved her hand and rushed up the stairs. However, when she rushed to the stairs, she did not go up. Instead, she crashed into the air wall. Eldest senior brother? Seeing Bai Xiaoyan stop in place, Jiang Chen asked, "There's a barrier here. We can't force our way in." Bai Xiaoyan shook her head and took 2 steps back. She said helplessly, "There's a barrier on the 3rd floor of the treasure pavilion on the 6th floor. There are so many traps inside. If you can't control them, I'm afraid almost no one can go in." Barrier? Jiang Chen hurried over and reached out to touch the air. Just as Bai Xiaoyan said, Jiang Chen touched the barrier and blocked him outside the stairs. In the art of mechanisms, it didn't say that there's a barrier in the treasure pavilion. Jiang Chen recalled carefully. That could be left behind by the immortal emperor. Only those who meet certain conditions are qualified to enter. But it could also be set up to prevent people from taking away their sex treasures. But no matter what, the things on the top floor are definitely better than we imagined. It's just that I'm afraid it won't be so easy to get. Bai Xiaoyan rubbed her chin and analyzed. Yeah, Jiang Chen was also a little disappointed. It seems that the mechanisms in the treasure pavilion are really strange. We didn't trigger them when we came in. After plundering the 1st floor, Lu Jie and Zhang Lin led their disciples to the 2nd floor and prepared to continue. But when they came up, they were dumbfounded. There was indeed a wooden shelf on the 2nd floor, but there was nothing on it. Lu Jie was just about to ask, but after feeling the terrifying aura coming from Bai Xiaoyan, he quickly closed his mouth. How could they dare to say anything about the things that the immortal king took? "You're not afraid of the traps?" Looking at them, Bai Xiaoyan asked with a faint smile. Of course not," Lu Jie said with forced calmness. "Let's go, eldest senior brother. Let's go out." Jiang Chen didn't bother about the barrier. If he had the time to wait here, he might as well go back to the barrier of light and ask the giant ape. Maybe it would know the situation here. Okay. Bai Xiaoyan nodded. Seeing Jiang Chen and the other 2 leave, Lu Jie and Zhang Lin looked at each other. No one dared to continue to go up. They dared to follow after seeing that Jiang Chen didn't trigger the mechanism. So they were afraid that Jiang Chen wouldn't go to the 3rd floor because the mechanism inside had been activated. As long as they stepped on it, they might die. Ka! The door of the treasure pavilion was pushed open. Seeing Jiang Chen come out safe and sound, the 1st elder's heart instantly fell back into his stomach. How is this possible? Sun Sheng seemed to be in disbelief. Why was it that the people from the East region were fine when they went in, but the people from his sect all died in an instant? Could it be like what Su Qian said, that only the people from the East region were fine when they went in? But that Jiang Chen was obviously a person from the overseas Immortal Mountain, and not a disciple of any sect in the East region. How is it? Did you encounter any danger? Glancing at Jiang Chen, the 1st elder quickly asked. No, the mechanism inside didn't trigger. My luck is too good. Jiang Chen shook his head. Other than Bai Xiaoyan and Bai Fengyu, the 2 people he completely trusted, he wouldn't tell anyone else about the mechanism technique. It's really strange. The secret of this treasure pavilion is somewhat unpredictable. The 1st elder stared at the treasure pavilion for a while. Chapter 16:12. Maybe I'm just too lucky, Jiang Chen said with a smile. Great elder, I brought out a lot of things, but with your Chinese sex background, I'm afraid it won't catch your eye. Ha, you can take all these things. Since you took them out, I naturally won't fight with you. Hearing this, the great elder laughed, and the originally somewhat serious atmosphere gradually relaxed. Not long after Jiang Chen and the other 2 came out, Lu Jie and Zhang Lin also came out of the treasure pavilion with their respective disciples. However, their eyes were fixed on Bai Xiaoyan. They didn't get anything from the 2nd floor. Everything on the wooden shelves had been swept clean. What's the situation? Are there any traps? Seeing them come out, Sun Sheng quickly asked. No, but they took everything from the 2nd floor. Lu Jie didn't mention anything about the 1st floor, afraid that Sun Sheng would ask for more than half of it. However, he told him about Jiang Chen and Bai Xiaoyan's actions. That way, Sun Sheng would also bear a grudge against the other party. This way, It would play the role of a borrowed knife to kill the other party. What about the third and fourth floor? This treasure pavilion has a total of 7 floors. You've been in there for so long. Did you see the situation clearly? Sun Sheng didn't pay attention to such trivial matters. Only the first and second floor's traps haven't been triggered. The third floor's traps are still active. Thinking about Jiang Chun and by Xiaoyan stopping in front of the stairs, Lu Jie said self-righteously, "Oh, only the first and second floor's traps are closed?" This news made Sun Sheng somewhat puzzled. What? Could it be that these traps have a limit? The other sects from the northern and southern regions also heard this. They kept thinking about this matter, trying to find the mystery and pattern of this matter. However, when these words floated to Jiang Chen's ears, Jiang Chen smiled faintly. This group of idiots. Bai Xiaoyan couldn't help but say, "Great Elder Su, now that the people from the northern and southern regions have come out safely, it's enough to prove that the treasure pavilion won't trigger any more traps. You people from the eastern region shouldn't continue to interfere. Otherwise, if word gets out, wouldn't the immortal world know that the Qianese sect is a dishonest sect?" Lu Jie and Zhang Lin's words gave Sun Sheng a boost of confidence. "Great Elder, let's follow his wishes." Before the Great Elder could speak, Jiang Chun hurriedly whispered, "All right, our Thousand Harmonies sect will no longer interfere with the matters of the treasure pavilion. However, if I find out that you are unable to obtain the treasures inside, then please give them up." The Great Elder did not suspect anything and chose to believe Jiang Chen's words. "It's a deal," Sun Sheng said confidently. He now believed that there was a limit to the number of times the mechanism could be triggered. After triggering it a certain number of times, it would lose its effectiveness. If he wanted to enter the third floor or even the top floor, he only needed to send people in to trigger the mechanism continuously, and he would be able to safely take away the treasures inside. Other than that, he couldn't think of any other reason. "Everyone, my Thousand Harmonies sect has left this place. If you want to enter the treasure pavilion, go talk to them." The Great Elder glanced at the sects of the eastern region who hadn't made a move yet, then left with his hands behind his back. What's the meaning of this? Needless to say, he must be angry because none of you stood up when he asked who was going to make a move. Who dares to go in? What if they die? So the Thousand Harmonies sect won't stand on your side. Old Ma, what you said is not right. When Su Qian asked who was going to enter, why didn't you go? For a time, the sects of the eastern region were in an uproar, blaming each other. After seeing this scene, Sun Sheng and the others were even more delighted. The sects of the eastern region were not on good terms with each other, which meant that they had a better chance of obtaining more treasures from the tomb of the immortal emperor. Don't you have a better way to deal with them? Looking at Jiang Chun, who was following him, the Great Elder couldn't help but ask. His original intention was to hold on a little longer. Since they could obtain the treasures on the first and second floors, then they would have a chance to enter the third floor and the top floor. Jiang Chun thought for a moment and explained, "The treasure pavilion is not like what they said. The mechanism on the third floor has been activated, but there is a bounded domain blocking the stairs. We tried to break in, but there was no way. So, let them continue to wait here. I'm afraid they won't have a chance to go in." The Great Elder tilted his head and looked at Jiang Chun. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed it. "I see. It seems that we won't be able to go inside for a while. But what I'm most curious about is the mechanism in the treasure pavilion. When you entered, none of the mechanisms were activated." "No." Jiang Chun shook his head. "Then let's not worry about the situation in the treasure pavilion for the time being." The Great Elder took Jiang Chun's arm and walked to the front of everyone. Then he said in a low voice, "Before I came here today, I had already arranged for a few protectors to explore deeper into the tomb. According to the information I know, the treasure of the immortal emperor shouldn't be in the treasure pavilion. However, the depths of the tomb are covered by a huge bounded domain. There are many sects nearby, so no one can enter." "Where is it?" Jiang Chun suddenly became interested. "After the treasure pavilion." The Great Elder replied briefly. "But based on the bounded domain in the treasure pavilion, there should be good things." Jiang Chun noted it down and continued. "Then what are you going to do next?" The Great Elder asked Jiang Chun. He felt that the kid beside him was like a puzzle after entering the tomb of the immortal emperor. He couldn't figure him out at all. "What about you, Great Elder?" Jiang Chen asked back. "Haha. To tell you the truth, it's impossible for me to let the sects of the northern and southern regions get the things in the treasure pavilion. I just left. On the surface, I listened to your suggestion, but it was also my idea. Only by leaving here will they let down their guard, and I can also carry out the next step of my plan." The Great Elder laughed. "I got a scroll in the treasure storage pavilion, and it seems pretty good. I'm going to study it. Otherwise, it'll be difficult for me to get any advantage over those sects with my cultivation level of the third level of the true immortal realm." Jiang Chen flipped his hand, and a scroll appeared in his storage ring. "Your cultivation should improve a little now." The Great Elder nodded. He glanced at the scroll in Jiang Chen's hand and saw that it was a very ordinary immortal technique, so he said casually, "The Thousand Harmonies sect had a lot of such scrolls, and they provided them to disciples who were not at the golden immortal realm." After separating from the Thousand Harmonies sect, Jiang Chen immediately put away the scroll. He had a fever for 2 days, and it only subsided today. Chapter 16:13. Now that he could control almost all the mechanisms in the immortal emperor's tomb, there was almost no way to enter the barrier. Therefore, it was very difficult for the sects in the north and south region to break through to the third level. What he should do now was to find a way to open the barrier. The only thing Jiang Chen could think of was to find the giant ape in the barrier of light and ask him. After all, he had lived in the immortal emperor's tomb for hundreds of years and should have some understanding of the tomb. After asking Bai Xiaoyan to take care of Bai Fengyu, Jiang Chen returned to the front of the tomb and entered the barrier of light. "Who is it?" After sensing that someone had broken into the barrier, the giant ape suddenly appeared. "Don't be agitated, it's me." Jiang Chen raised his hand. Although he had a good conversation with it, it was still a fierce beast after all. Moreover, it had the strength of a 6th or 7th level immortal king. If it saw him wrongly and slapped him, he would really lose his life. "Didn't you go out from the barrier?" Seeing that it was an acquaintance, the giant ape immediately shrank and turned into the same youth as before. It quickly ran towards Jiang Chen. "I'm here to ask you something." Jiang Chen cupped his hands at it. "What's the situation?" "I will definitely tell you if I know." The giant ape turned and walked into the palace. Jiang Chen quickly followed. Walking into the palace, Jiang Chen saw that the originally empty hall was now filled with the corpses of many spirit beasts. "Last night, I went out to hunt for some food." The giant ape waved his hand, and all the spirit beasts on the ground were moved to other places. Even the blood disappeared completely. However, the air was still filled with a faint smell of blood. "Are you going out soon?" Thinking of what the giant ape said before, Jiang Chen asked curiously. "Yes, before going out, it's better to eat until I'm full. When I go out, I have to think of a way to deal with those who violated the rules of the immortal emperor. I won't be in the mood to eat properly." The giant ape casually sat on a stool and smiled. Who would have thought that this seemingly simple and honest young man was actually a 7th-tier immortal king, immortal ape who had lived for countless years? "I'm afraid it won't be easy to get rid of that person," Jiang Chen said with a slight frown. "He can control immortal kings, even though he's only at the 1st level." "It's all right. But why did you come looking for me today? What information do you want?" The giant ape was more concerned about Jiang Chen's question. "You should know about the treasure pavilion in the tomb of the immortal emperor, right?" Jiang Chen thought for a while, and when he realized that the giant ape was certain that he had obtained the immortal emperor's approval, he directly said it. "I know." The giant ape nodded. "When I was free, I even went inside to take a look. Aren't you the guardian immortal beast of this place?" Jiang Chen was a little surprised. "I'm the guardian immortal beast, but I can also walk around in the tomb. The immortal emperor didn't restrict our freedom." The giant ape crossed its legs. "Since you've been inside the treasure pavilion, you must know that there's a barrier on the 3rd floor. Do you know how to enter the barrier?" Hearing this, Jiang Chen was interested and quickly asked, "Just like that?" The giant ape was a little stunned. "No, what I mean is when I was on the 2nd floor, I wanted to go to the 3rd floor, but I was blocked outside by the barrier. You can go in, but I can't. Jiang Chun touched his hair. Oh, you're talking about this. It's very simple. Only people who have cultivated the immortal arts of the Immortal Emperor sect can enter the treasure pavilion. As long as you learn the light attraction technique, the barrier naturally won't stop you. However, if you want to enter the top floor, you have to obtain the approval of the Immortal Emperor. The giant ape understood what Jiangchen said. Obtain the approval of the Immortal Emperor? Jiangchen suddenly felt speechless. Now that the Immortal Emperor had been dead for God knows how many years, obtaining his approval was simply impossible. Yes, the giant ape nodded. Isn't the Immortal Emperor dead? How can you obtain his approval? Jiangchen asked directly. Could it be that there's still a wisp of the Immortal Emperor's soul alive in this tomb? No, the Immortal Emperor completely fell in the war that year. As far as I know, in a secret room at the back of the tomb, there's a stone tablet set up by him. Put your palm on it, and if you can obtain his approval, the stone tablet will shine, and vice versa. The giant ape shook his head and continued to explain. I see. Jiang Chun gradually understood. So if you want to enter the treasure pavilion, you'd better learn the immortal art that the Immortal Emperor left for you as soon as possible. As for the other things in the barrier, you can take them if you want. If you don't want to take them, just throw them in there. When the tomb of the Immortal Emperor reappears in 500 years, there may be other cultivators of the 5 attributes coming. As he spoke, the giant ape stretched out his hand, and a roasted spiritual beast leg appeared in his hand. Then I'll cultivate here. Thinking of the sect master of the Black Sect, Jiang Chun was not ready to go out again. Once he was affected during his cultivation, not only would he not be able to comprehend the immortal art, he might even go mad. And here, with the protection of the giant ape, the sect master of the Black Sect would have to think twice before making a move on him. You can do it here, but you must consider it carefully. The Immortal Sovereign's grave will disappear in 28 days. And if you don't end your secluded practice in 28 days, you will probably be buried along with the grave and will only reappear 500 years later. The giant ape looked at Jiang Chun with an odd expression. 28 days. That's enough, Jiang Chun said in a deep voice, taking the worn-out attracting light method out of his storage ring. Yes, I'll protect you. Except for your 2 friends. I won't let anyone enter the barrier. The giant ape nodded and agreed with Jiang Chen's opinion. Jiang Chen did not hesitate and immediately took the book and walked into the passage. It shouldn't be a problem for a cultivator of 5 attributes to comprehend a light attraction technique. It's just that 28 days is a little short, the giant ape muttered softly as he looked at Jiang Chen's back. When Jiang Chun disappeared into the passage, the giant ape immediately turned back into an immortal beast. With a wave of his hand, the corpses of the spiritual beasts appeared in the hall once again. He walked into the passage. Jiang Chun found a decent place and sat down cross-legged. He flipped open the light attraction technique and read the contents inside. The contents of the book were easy to understand. It taught how to mobilize the light attribute energy in nature and transform it for one's own use. Originally, this was something that every light attribute cultivator had to learn when they entered the sect. However, in this light attraction technique, the explanation was more detailed, and there were 3 light attribute immortal arts inside. My fever has just subsided, and I feel terrible. Chapter 16:14. Jiang Chen sat there for a long time, as if he was sitting still. He didn't do anything. It was unknown how much time had passed before he flipped through the book in front of him. A few days passed quietly. Bai Xiaoyan and Bai Fengyu entered the Light Ward without receiving any news from Jiang Chen. But before they could enter the palace, they were stopped outside by the giant ape. Knowing that Jiang Chen was comprehending the light absorption technique inside, they rested outside the palace and did not disturb him. Compared to the quietness inside the Light Ward, the tomb of the Immortal Emperor gradually became chaotic. Ever since they heard Lu Jie and Zhang Lin's opinions about the treasure pavilion, many sects in the northern and southern regions had sent their weaker disciples to enter the treasure pavilion. Their goal was to exhaust the number of times the mechanism was triggered so that they could enter the 3rd, 4th, and 5th levels. However, no matter how many disciples they sent out, No matter whether these disciples were shot to death or were lucky enough to escape with injuries, they only received one piece of news. That was that the third level was blocked by a barrier, and they could not approach it at all. Furthermore, the mechanisms in the second level had not been exhausted at all. Many people would still die tragically as soon as they entered. After clarifying the situation inside the treasure pavilion, several elders of the larger sects, including Sun Sheng, restrained Lu Jie and Zhang Lin in an open space in front of the treasure pavilion. Now, two stone pillars appeared out of thin air. Lu Jie and Zhang Lin were tied up with ropes as thick as an arm. The ropes had a faint flowing light. While restraining them, they also sealed their immortal power so that they could not display their immortal venerables cultivation and could not escape from here. Seeing their sect masters being treated like this, the disciples of the Horizontal Blade sect and the Witheredwood sect did not dare to move, for fear of getting into trouble. Elder Sun Sheng, why did you chain us up here? Zhang Lin struggled with all his might, but not only was he unable to break free, he felt the rope binding him tighter and tighter, as if it was about to forcefully break his bones. The rope also seemed to be suppressing his immortal energy, causing his entire body to be powerless, unable to even use a tenth of his normal strength. Zhang Lin, you entered the treasure vault as a representative of the Southern Mountain Range, but you brought back false news. The mechanism on the second floor was not closed. This caused many of our disciples to lose their lives. How do you plan to repay this debt? A muscular man with a fierce-looking face stepped forward and pressed the long saber in his hand against Zhang Lin's neck. You all saw the situation back then. Sect Master Lu and I led our men in. Jiang Chen and the other two also went in. We all came out safe and sound. Who knows if you all triggered a new mechanism? Besides, you're not from the judgment team. What right do you have to tie us up here? We're all sect masters. Don't think that you can do whatever you want to us just because your cultivation is higher. Zhang Lin gritted his teeth and stared at them. Sect leader Zhang, it's useless to say these words now. You've already angered the sects of the North region and the South region. If you don't resolve this, even if I let you go today, you won't be able to leave here alive. After a few days of rest, Sun Sheng's injuries were almost healed. He walked up to Zhang Lin, looked him up and down, and said, I'll hand over everything we got in the treasure vault. Zhang Lin dared to speak loudly to others, but he did not dare to be disrespectful to Sun Sheng. After all, Sun Sheng was one of the celestial kings from the northern and southern mountain ranges. If they offended him, they would definitely die. Oh, Sun Sheng was a little surprised. That's right. We can hand it over, but only the items on the first floor. The items on the second floor have been taken by Jiang Chen. If you want them, go to him. Lu Jie said, then I'll give you a chance. Sun Sheng waved his hand, and the ropes fell off from their bodies. It's all here. Zhang Lin and Lu Jie said almost at the same time. They took out their storage rings. A white light flashed, and the books, scrolls, and wooden boxes that they had plundered from the first floor all appeared in front of them. It's all here. Take it if you want. Zhang Lin moved his aching body. It's all rubbish. Whoever likes it can take it. After taking a look, the smile on Sun Sheng's face froze. Although they were all things from the tomb of the Celestial Emperor, the items on the first floor were all rubbish that he did not need at all. The Yin-Yang sect was a middle sect in the northern region. Including him, there were 3 celestial kings in the Yin-Yang sect. There were countless cultivation methods like these in the Yin-Yang sect. Taking them back would just be a waste of space. These things were not useful to the Yin-Yang sect, but they were indeed rare treasures for those small sects. Thus, this group of people rushed forward and swept away all the scrolls and wooden boxes on the ground in the blink of an eye. They didn't intend to stay here for long and would leave immediately after they got what they wanted. In any case, they had come all the way to the eastern region just to take advantage of the Celestial Emperor's tomb. Now that they had taken it, if they continued to stay here, they might even lose their lives. Elder Sun Sheng, can you let us leave now? Lu Jie could not help but feel a little sad when he saw all the things he had obtained with great difficulty being taken away. However, compared to his life, this was nothing. Who allowed you to leave? Sun Sheng smiled crookedly. I just agreed to let you hand over all the things you have. I didn't agree to let you leave, did I? What do you want to do? Zhang Lin and Lu Jie had a bad feeling. Of course, I want you to pay a price. Sun Sheng snorted coldly. The two bundles of ropes that had fallen to the ground floated in the air again. In the blink of an eye, they were tied around their necks. As Sun Sheng clenched his hands, the ropes suddenly tightened and broke their necks. Zhang Lin and Lu Jie did not even have a chance to struggle before they fell limply to the ground. When the disciples of the Horizontal Saber School and the Witheredwood faction saw this, they felt a chill run from the soles of their feet to the top of their heads. They could not help but shiver. Disappear from my sight in 1 minute, or I'll bury you with me. Sun Sheng turned around and looked at those disciples who were trembling with fear. Looking at them fleeing in panic, Sun Sheng laughed loudly. The reason he killed Lu Jie and Zhang Lin was to vent his anger. In this matter, he was once again tricked by the Qina sect. Although he did not know why the mechanism was not triggered, the treasures on the second floor of the treasure pavilion were indeed taken away by Jiang Chun. Sooner or later, he would take revenge for this. Moreover, he must let that brat, who was only in the third stage of the true immortal realm, get the consequences he deserved. Chapter 16:15. In the darkness, Jiang Chun finished reading the entire light guiding technique. What surprised him was that he had always thought that this was a very ordinary immortal technique, but now it seemed that this immortal technique was not ordinary at all. It was just that the name was a little cliché. What was recorded in the immortal technique was how to mobilize the surrounding light attribute energy for one's own use in the shortest time possible. With his current cultivation of a third-level true immortal, he could only mobilize about 100 meters in radius. If he became an immortal venerable, he would be able to mobilize all the light attribute energy within hundreds of kilometers. Simply put, this was an immortal technique that could be continuously strengthened as long as one's cultivation continued to improve. The 3 moves recorded at the end of the light guiding technique were how to release the light attribute energy absorbed into one's body. However, no matter how hard Jiang Chun cultivated, he could not completely comprehend it because his cultivation was only at the 3rd level true immortal realm. This meant that there was no way to break through the barrier on the 3rd floor of the treasure pavilion, and there was no way to get the approval of the immortal emperor to obtain the treasures on the top floor. He suddenly opened his eyes. Jiang Chun took a deep breath. After several days of continuous cultivation, he was a little tired, as expected of something left behind by the immortal emperor. I underestimated it. I'm afraid I can't perceive its mystery in just over 20 days. Looking at the light guiding technique in his hand, Jiang Chun could not help but feel a little depressed. If he could thoroughly understand it and use it for himself, then when he fought in the future, the destruction caused by mobilizing the light attribute energy within a radius of dozens of kilometers was not something that ordinary people could withstand. Thinking of this, Jiang Chun was about to go out and ask the giant ape if there was any way to help him comprehend it. However, before he could get up, Jiang Chun's gaze fell on his fingers. In the storage ring given by Cho Wanli, the wooden tablet that he had asked for before was stored. The words light guiding technique were also recorded on the wooden tablet. Swoosh! With a flip of his hand, the wooden tablet appeared on his palm. Immediately after, Jiang Chun calmed his mind and wrapped it with his immortal power. The wooden tablet was soon suspended in the air in front of him. Jiang Chun controlled his mental power, trying to perceive its mystery. Nonetheless, when his mental power approached the wooden sign, it bounced back as if it had come into contact with a barrier. Jiang Chun frowned slightly. It wasn't like he hadn't encountered such a situation before, but he didn't take it too seriously. He only thought that it was because he wasn't focused enough. After taking a few deep breaths, Jiang Chun forced himself to stop all the thoughts in his mind. All he could hear was his own weak breathing. In this state, Jiang Chun continued to control his mental power to touch the wooden sign. Nonetheless, the mental power was repelled again before it could touch the wooden badge. The entire wooden tablet seemed to be completely enveloped by some kind of energy. No matter what Jiang Chun did, it was suspended in midair, motionless. Jiangchen realized that the wooden sign wasn't as simple as he thought. If it was just an ordinary sign, it wouldn't have such a strong repelling force. Jiangchen had no choice but to take it back. There were still more than 20 days left. He could either completely comprehend the light guiding art, enter the treasure pavilion, gain the immortal emperor's approval, and obtain the supreme treasure left behind by the immortal emperor in the tomb. Otherwise, he would have to give up halfway and cultivate the light guiding art when his cultivation base was more refined in the future. However, by that time, the immortal emperor's tomb would have long disappeared, and the items inside would no longer be fated to be with him. Thinking of this, Jiangchen clenched his fists. In the past, when he was in the other worlds, he always got whatever he wanted. Treasures that he saw would definitely fall into his hands. How could he watch the immortal emperor's items disappear in front of him now? While he was thinking, Jiangchen casually put the wooden sign back into his interspatial ring. A slightly crazy idea appeared in his mind. Not only was there a wooden sign in his interspatial ring, but there were also all the herbs that he obtained from the area in the palace. Most of the herbs were beneficial for the improvement of one's cultivation base. Jiangchen didn't hesitate at all. He directly took them out, then channeled his immortal power to force out the essences of all the herbs. After a while, a drop of very pure and huge energy ball appeared in front of him. It's indeed difficult for a third-level true immortal to achieve anything in the immortal world. If I don't improve my strength as soon as possible, I'm afraid that I'll be killed by my enemies sooner or later. With the experience of my 10 lives, it shouldn't be a problem to devour this kind of essence. When this idea appeared in his mind, Jiangchen opened his mouth and swallowed the small ball. As soon as it entered his body, Jiangchen felt a very powerful energy spread out in his body. However, this wasn't the energy of the small ball itself, but a basic reaction when the small ball came into contact with the immortal power in his body. Enduring this swelling feeling, Jiangchen channeled the immortal power in his body to envelop the ball and slowly circulate it along his meridians. If he wanted to absorb all the energy in it, he must first let it familiarize himself with it. When the time was right, he would tear it apart and completely convert the energy for his own use. However, this power condensed from dozens of herbs was not something that Jiangchen could suppress with his current cultivation. When the immortal power enveloped it, Jiangchen's body instantly became incomparably hot. His skin turned red, and sweat kept dripping from his pores to the ground. Even the turbid air he exhaled carried a blazing temperature. Oh no, I should have done it step by step. Jiangchen was shocked. He clearly felt that he was too anxious for success. He only remembered that, with his experience, devouring this kind of energy was not a problem at all. However, he forgot that his cultivation was only at the third-level true immortal realm. When this small ball landed on Jiangchen's meridians, it was as if it had taken root. No matter how much immortal power he channeled to carry it through his meridians, it was useless. Jiangchen had a bad premonition. It was impossible to spit it out now. As long as he relaxed his immortal power, this power would explode instantly, causing him to explode and die. However, if he left it here, it would be like an energy ball that could explode at any time in his body. Moreover, his meridians would not be able to withstand such a powerful energy. In a few days, all the meridians in his body would be burning. It was difficult to get off the tiger, and he was in a dilemma. This was the best portrayal of Jiangchen's current situation. Taking a deep breath, Jiangchen forced himself to calm down. Since he couldn't do it either way, he could only take it. That was to use immortal power to tear the small ball apart, gradually release the energy inside, and slowly absorb it. Other than this, Jiangchen couldn't think of any other way. Chapter 16:16. Just as the small ball was torn apart by Jiangchen's immortal power, the pure energy contained in it instantly burst out. The resulting wave not only injured Jiangchen, but also spread out. At this time, Bai Xiaoyun, who was sitting outside the main hall and resting, suddenly felt that something was wrong. In the bounded domain, other than Jiangchen, who was cultivating, and the guardian divine beast giant ape, there was only him and Bai Fengyu. How could there be such a strong wave of energy? But soon, Bai Xiaoyan reacted and hurriedly ran into the main hall. Little ape, Jiang Chun may have encountered a problem. Where is he in seclusion? Just as she entered the main hall, Bai Xiaoyan saw the anxious giant ape, who was about to move to the back of the main hall, and quickly asked, below the passage, could it be that he broke through? Seeing Bai Xiaoyan, the expression on little ape's face eased a little, but it still looked very nervous. That's not right. Even if he broke through, he would only be a golden immortal. But this wave of energy is at least an immortal venerable. Let's go and see what's the situation. Knowing the specific location of Jiangchun, Bai Xiaoyan did not have time to talk to it and ran over there. At this time, the entrance of the passage had been destroyed by the wave of energy. Leave it to me. A rough voice came from behind. Little ape had changed back to the giant ape form. He said to Bai Xiaoyan, then went to the front of the hole and began to clean it up. Originally, he could directly open it up, but he was afraid that he would hurt Jiangchun below. About 5 minutes later, the passage opened, and Bai Xiaoyan immediately jumped in. When he reached the bottom, he saw Jiangchun sitting cross-legged in the corner, frowning. His clothes had been torn apart, and blood was slowly flowing out from the pores on his skin. How could this be? Bai Xiaoyan was a little flustered. There is a very pure energy in his body that has not been digested. I don't know the reason, but his body is not strong enough to support it. If we don't think of a way quickly, I'm afraid his body will explode and he will die. The giant ape's figure quickly shrank. After it turned into the appearance of a young man, it quickly walked in front of Jiangchun and said while sizing him up. After saying that, he reached out and touched Jiangchun's body. When it came into contact with Jiangchun's skin, it quickly retracted. The temperature of Jiangchun's body was comparable to that of the hottest store. Let me do it. Bai Xiaoyan circulated the immortal power in her body and prepared to directly extract the pure energy from Jiangchun's body. At this time, Jiangchun was desperately trying to control the situation in his body. Although he had previous experience, his cultivation was only at the 3rd level of true immortal. The uncontrollable pure energy that was constantly flowing through his meridians had caused him a lot of damage. Bai Xiaoyan walked in front of Jiangchun with a worried look in her eyes. She was about to reach out and press on his back to extract the energy, but at this critical moment, she suddenly withdrew her hand. She suddenly realized that if she helped Jiangchun at this time, the immortal power in Jiangchun's body, which was originally condensed to deal with the pure energy, might lose its target and attack him uncontrollably. Moreover, it was very likely that Jiangchun would enter a state of qi deviation. Master, how is he? After a while, Bai Fengyu also ran down. Not very good. I don't know what he swallowed, but there is a very violent pure energy in his body. With his current cultivation, there is no way to completely digest it. If we force it, it will cause damage to him. But if we don't extract it, I'm afraid his body will explode. Bai Xiaoyan said helplessly. At the same time, she threw a saint healing technique on Jiangchun's body. I have a way. Little ape, who had been silent on the side, suddenly spoke. Say it quickly. Bai Xiaoyan asked anxiously. The one guarding the wood barrier is a tramp from the immortal forest. If we invite him here, he can save Jiangchun's life so that his body and cultivation won't be damaged. Little ape looked at Jiangchun and said with a worried look, Can someone from the wood barrier come here? Bai Xiaoyan frowned. One must know that only those with light attribute immortal power in their body could enter the barrier. That's for you. After Little Ape dropped this sentence, he immediately ran toward the passage. After a while, Little Ape hurried out of the passage. Behind him was an old man wearing a gray-green robe. But the skin exposed by the old man was as dry as a tree, and there were also gullies. This is the tramp from the immortal world who guards the wood barrier. Just like me, you can call him Old Shoe. Little Ape pulled him in front of Jiangchun. Old Shoe, please save my junior brother. He has swallowed a pure energy. With his current strength, he can't digest it at all. We don't dare to act rashly, for fear that it will cause him to go mad. Bai Xiaoyan said with an agitated look. Okay, leave it to me, but this old man has to make it clear in advance. I can only protect his safety. As for whether he can digest it or not, that's not something I can control. Old Shu stood in front of Jiangchun. After saying this, he stretched out his hand and pressed it on the ground. Immediately, the withered palm turned into a gray-green tree stump at a speed visible to the naked eye. A few seconds later, it grew out around Jiangchun. Several branches surrounded Jiangchun and soon included Jiangchun. Phew, Bai Xiaoyan relaxed after hearing Old Shu's words. Under Old Shu's protection, Jiangchun's aura turned from violent to stable, and the pores on his body stopped bleeding. Jiangchun was naturally aware of the changes in the outside world, but he was now focused on digesting all the pure energy. With Old Shu's protection, his meridians, which were on the verge of swelling, gradually calmed down. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Jiangchun urged his immortal force to gradually transform the pure energy in his body into his own. His aura has stabilized. Feeling the immortal force fluctuations from Jiangchun, Little Ape walked to Bai Xiaoyun's side and sat on the side. I really don't know what this kid is doing. Bai Xiaoyun also patted her chest. I don't know either. When he entered the barrier, he said that he wanted to comprehend the light absorption technique. Little Ape sighed and said, "Who would have thought that this kid would become like this after coming in? When he's done, ask him if he swallowed something he shouldn't have. With this pure energy, if he can absorb it all, his cultivation will rise by a big step." Bai Xiaoyan looked at Jiangchun, who was wrapped in branches, and said faintly, "That depends on whether his luck is good or not. Although he's now under Old Shu's protection, it won't be easy for him to absorb it all with his current strength. The tomb of the immortal emperor will be sealed in 22 days. If he can't completely absorb it in 22 days, he will have to wait here for 500 years before he can get out." Little Ape also looked at Jiangchun. Chapter 16-17. Time continued to pass. Bai Xiaoyan and Little Ape were sitting on a rock not far from Jiangchun. Bai Fengyu was standing in front of Jiangchun, constantly sizing him up, fearing that something would happen to Jiangchun. This way, she could inform the others immediately. In the originally quiet underground area, after another 2 or 3 days, footsteps suddenly sounded in the passage. "Who is it?" Bai Xiaoyan instantly sensed it and quickly turned around. Immortal power immediately overflowed and spread out. "Don't worry, I'm here to check the situation." A tall and beautiful woman slowly walked out of the passageway. Her every movement was full of grace and grace. "Who are you?" Looking at such a coquettish woman, Bai Xiaoyan was a little vigilant because he clearly sensed that this person's strength was higher than his. She was at least in the 5th layer of the Immortal King realm, the guardian spiritual beast of the fire barrier, the eldest daughter of the fire spirit phoenix, Huafu. Little Ape stood up and whispered to Bai Xiaoyan, "It's about the Ward of Light. What is she, a member of the Ward of Fire, doing here? Is she looking for trouble?" Bai Xiaoyan took 2 steps back as she spoke, shielding Old Shu and Jiangchun behind her. "The various barriers in the tomb are connected. I didn't want to come when there was such a strong fluctuation of immortal power here, but this fluctuation has been going on, so I wanted to come and watch the show. You don't welcome me, right?" Huafu's charming eyes were like silk, a pair of peach blossom eyes that could almost hook the soul of any man. "You can watch, but don't affect Junior Brother." Bai Xiaoyan lowered his head and didn't look at Huafu. At this time, he was also worried about Jiangchun's safety and didn't have the mood to think about those things. "No problem. I'll sit here and wait with you. I'm just a little curious. That kid is clearly only in the 3rd layer of the true immortal realm. How can he burst out such a strong fluctuation?" Huafu sat in front of Jiangchun and looked at the handsome young man protected by the branches. She couldn't help but look at Jiangchun's face a few more times. "I don't know what kind of energy this kid swallowed. If we didn't protect him, I'm afraid he would have exploded and died." Little Ape knew what kind of person Huafu was, so he directly explained the situation to her. "Tsk tisk." Fire Lotus gently shook her head. "By the way, I'll be going out after the Immortal Emperor's tomb is over. You should be able to sense that someone broke into the Barrier of Light a few days ago. I have to investigate it thoroughly." Old Shu and Huafu were both present, so Little Ape directly told them, "Moreover, I have already given away the light drawing technique of the Immortal Emperor. According to the agreement with the immortal emperor, I will no longer be bound by the tomb. What do you mean? Fire Lotus was a little envious. Little Ape pointed at Jiang Chun and said to Horfu, "Do you see that brat? He is the descendant of the 5 elements recognized by the immortal emperor. The reason he became like this is because he went into seclusion to cultivate the light attraction technique. He wants to obtain the final recognition of the immortal emperor and obtain the supreme treasure in the tomb. However, I don't know what he has devoured. He has 5 types of immortal power?" Fire Lotus immediately raised her head to look at Jiang Chun. Little Ape nodded and said, "Otherwise, how could he be qualified to obtain the light attraction technique? Moreover, I feel that this brat should have more than 5 elements. If the immortal emperor left some treasure for him, it won't take many years for him to achieve something in the immortal realm." Little Ape nodded and said, "Then if he obtains the flame attraction technique, can I also go out?" Fire Lotus suddenly became excited. "You have to ask this brat if he is willing. If he is willing to take away the flame attraction technique, you will definitely be able to go out. If he is not willing to take it, I'm afraid you will have to wait for another practitioner with 5 elements. Little Ape said very seriously, "No, in all these years, I don't know how many people I have met who entered the barrier of fire. At most, I have met someone with 4 elements. It is too rare to meet someone with 5 elements. Fire Lotus shook her head. "You ask him." Little Ape didn't know what to say. "Don't worry, leave this matter to me. In the immortal realm, there is no woman that I can't handle." Fire Lotus was still very confident in herself. As the eldest daughter of the spiritual Phoenix clan, she had inherited the charm of the Phoenix clan. In addition to her peerless appearance, all the men who met her were tempted. Therefore, she believed that Jiang Chun would absolutely not refuse her. As long as she left the tomb, she could return to the Phoenix clan or go to the immortal realm to play. Although she had volunteered to stay here to guard the barrier of fire because of the immortal emperor's kindness, after so many years, her patience had long been worn out. "This brat looks about 25 or 26 years old. You have lived for thousands of years." Little Ape tilted his head and looked at her, his eyes a little dull. Who knows where he came from? Maybe he is thousands of years old. Fire Lotus snorted coldly. In any case, Jiang Chen's relatively delicate face was still very much to her liking. "Let's wait until he wakes up." Little Ape didn't want to talk anymore, fearing that he would hear some strange words from Fire Lotus. Half a month passed. There were less than 7 days left before the immortal emperor's tomb closed. Jiang Chun didn't have any reaction from beginning to end. However, one could clearly feel that his aura was gradually slowing down, and there was a trend of it increasing. If one carefully sensed it, it had already risen from true immortal realm 3rd layer to golden immortal realm. Bai Xiaoyan and the others all left this place. Other than Old Shu, who had been protecting Jiang Chun, there was also Bai Fengyu who didn't leave. If this brat doesn't wake up, he will have to stay in the immortal emperor's tomb for 500 years. Old Shu sighed faintly. "Old Senior, do you think he can wake up?" Bai Fengyu was very worried. During this period of time, her mind had been tense, and she hadn't had a good rest. Her originally beautiful eyes were now bloodshot, and her entire person was a lot more haggard. "I don't dare to say. He is too anxious for success. With such a huge amount of energy entering his body, it's already not easy for him to stay alive. As for when he will wake up, it depends on when he can completely digest it." Old Shu shook his head. "Besides, 500 years is not a long time. The few of us have already stayed in the tomb for a total of 5,000 years. Sigh. Bai Fengyu's hands trembled slightly, but she didn't know what to say. While they were talking, Jiang Chen's finger moved. In the past 20 days, Jiang Chen had been doing his best to absorb the energy. Every time, he would carefully release a little and use his immortal energy to circulate throughout his body. When the energy became docile, he would guide it into his chi acupoints. This was a very boring process that required constant vigilance and concentration. Therefore, Jiang Chen cut off all contact with the outside world. However, he could still sense that there was definitely someone helping him from the outside world. Chapter 16-18. What supported Jiang Chun was not only the protection of old Shu, but also the belief in his heart. I have just entered the immortal realm and haven't even seen my mother. If I can't even digest this energy, how can I face the other difficulties in the immortal realm? It was because of this idea that Jiang Chun gritted his teeth and endured the pain and discomfort in his body, gradually absorbing all the pure energy. His cultivation base also increased rapidly in an extremely short period of time. In the originally quiet underground area, Bai Xiaoyan was sitting cross-legged and resting. When she felt Jiang Chen's cultivation increase, she immediately opened her eyes. Even little Ape and Huafu, who were outside, quickly walked in. Completely digested, Bai Fengyu stared at Jiang Chun with a pair of bloodshot eyes. It seems so, but before he fully wakes up, I dare not say what the consequences will be. Bai Xiaoyan walked in front of Jiang Chun and observed the situation. Under the gaze of the four people, Jiang Chun slowly woke up in the branch. However, it was at this moment that Jiang Chun's cultivation suddenly improved. An invisible fluctuation spread out from him. Good heavens! Directly from the third layer of true immortal to the second layer of celestial immortal. Bai Xiaoyan could not help but exclaim when she felt Jiang Chen's aura. How did this kid's strength improve so quickly? Little Ape was also very curious. Think about how much pure energy he absorbed. At that time, I felt the aura fluctuation close to that of an immortal venerable. I didn't expect it to come from a kid with the cultivation of the third layer of true immortal. But I'm curious, with his strength, even with old Shu's protection, how is it possible for him to absorb such pure energy completely? Is there any secret in his body? Huafu, sitting next to him, kept glancing at Jiang Chun. Under their gaze, Jiang Chun slowly opened his eyes. Clenching his fists and feeling the energy in his body and meridians, Jiang Chun grinned. Second layer of celestial immortal, not bad. When he opened his eyes, the tree branch slowly withdrew from his body and disappeared into the ground. Senior, thank you for your help. Jiang Chun cupped his hands and said in a deep voice to the old man who sat up beside him, "There's no need to thank me, but this old man is a little curious. How did you dare to swallow such a powerful energy with your cultivation in the third layer of the true immortal realm? If I hadn't protected your body and meridians, you would have exploded and died with your own strength." Old Shu looked at Jiang Chun and shook his head. To comprehend the light channeling technique, Jiang Chun did not evade the question. Oh, Old Shu was surprised. My cultivation base is too low to fully comprehend the light attraction technique, Jiang Chun said with a faint smile. You're really too risky. What if an accident happens? Bai Fengyu stepped forward and punched Jiang Chun in the chest. It's okay. I know what I'm doing. Seeing the blood vessels in Bai Fengyu's eyes, Jiang Chun felt guilty. How's the light channeling technique? Have you learned it? Seeing that Jiang Chun was fine, Bai Xiaoyan was relieved. Yes. Jiang Chun nodded heavily. After taking 2 steps back, he squatted down and pressed his palm on the ground. Under the effect of the light channeling technique, all the light energy in the surroundings quickly gathered. When Jiang Chun stood up, the light energy appeared on his palm. With a thought, a white and flawless long sword appeared in his hand. This long sword was one of the last 3 immortal techniques of the light channeling technique. In more than 20 days, Jiang Chun not only absorbed all the pure energy, but also completely comprehended the light channeling technique. When Jiang Chun absorbed all the light, the whole area instantly became pitch black. He could not even tell who was standing in front of him. Not bad. You should be able to reach the 3rd floor of the treasure pavilion now. When Jiang Chun stopped and the surroundings regained some light, Little Ape gave Jiang Chun a thumbs up. I'm afraid it's not going to work. When Jiang Chun was about to speak, Bai Xiaoyan frowned slightly. Is the tomb of the immortal emperor closed? Jiang Chun was startled. He thought that he had been cultivating for too long, and that Bai Xiaoyan and Bai Fengyu were both trapped inside with him. It's not that bad. There are still 3 days before the tomb closes. It's just that the sects of the eastern region and the northern and southern regions have completely fallen out. They even want to take action and drive all the sects of the eastern region out. Bai Xiaoyan went out several times when Jiang Chun was in seclusion and knew the situation outside. They are occupying the treasure pavilion and can't enter. Do they dare to completely fall out with the sects of the eastern region here? Jiang Chun frowned slightly. Yes, the sects here are not the top sects of the northern and southern regions. Moreover, the Thousand Harmonies sect has already withdrawn, so they don't have to worry about anything. In order to enter the treasure pavilion, they have already paid with the lives of many disciples. I heard that even the barrier of the third floor was not broken. This group of people has already become angry out of shame. Bai Xiaoyan nodded and continued. Let's go out and take a look. Thinking that there were only 3 days left, Jiang Chun was not prepared to delay any longer. However, just after he finished speaking, before he could take a step forward, his arm was pulled. Little brother, why are you in such a hurry to go out? If you want to get the things in the treasure pavilion, we can protect you. Hua Fu pulled Jiang Chen's arm and said softly. However, when she did so, Bai Fengyu clenched her fists. Ahem, may I ask who you are? Seeing such a coquettish woman, Jiang Chen coughed twice and asked, I am the guardian spirit beast of the barrier of fire. You can just call me Sister Hua Fu. Hua Fu covered her mouth and laughed softly. Sister Hua Fu, if you take me to the treasure pavilion, won't you break the rules of the immortal emperors? Jiang Chun was embarrassed. Although this was indeed a good idea, if he really did so, wouldn't he offend the sects of the northern and southern regions and even the eastern region? It's okay. Moreover, I saw that you mastered the light-attracting technique so easily. You should be able to learn my fire-attracting technique easily, right? Hua Fu took out a fragrant book from her clothes and handed it to Jiang Chen. When she was smoking, Jiang Chen clearly saw the scene inside her clothes. Ahem, I entered the barrier of light. Now that I'm taking the things of your barrier of fire, it doesn't seem too good, right? Jiang Chen's face instantly turned red. He was somewhat at a loss of what to do. Here, take it. Hua Fu's pretty face turned cold. She directly pressed the fire-attracting technique on Jiang Chen's chest. Okay, I'll take it. Jiang Chen did not dare to offend her and could only nod in agreement. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.